Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developing Palates. I'm Aaron Loomis coming to you from the Drew Estate Studio. And with me today from the Pastano Studio is John McTavish. How you doing, John?
Good man. I'm still recovering. I had a early birthday celebration on Saturday, and as celebrations go, it got appropriately out of hand. But unfortunately, as I close here on 50 tomorrow, my recovery time is it's a little bit longer
Yeah,
than it used to be. I'm not ready to go by the next afternoon.
that's right. You have to plan like a 3-day weekend or something just to recover from
Yeah,
the party. So,
yeah, 100%.
um, yeah.
How
All
are you
right. So
doing?
today we're doing like something a little different. So we're doing one of like the three live shows that we do during the course of a year, and this one is
Mhm.
our cigar media recap for 2024. And as usual, we've invited some of our friends on to help discuss this. So let me introduce them. Maybe coming from the back room of a Staples is Eric Guttormson from Cigar Dojo. How you doing,
Yeah.
Eric?
Wow. Yes, I am in a different. What happens is on days like today, you can't have like the president, the vice president, and me all in the same location.
Got it.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm,
I am
mm-hmm.
in a secret bunker, you
Right.
know, way
Yeah.
beneath the earth, just on the off chance that
Something
that they're
goes
gonna
down.
need me to,
Yeah.
take the reins at
Yeah.
any
Eric,
moment.
that's smart because who knows what the Canadians are going to do now that they're all riled up, right? I mean, they're
Right.
unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
You never know where they are because they look like you, they sound like you. I mean, they could be anywhere. They could be anywhere. They could be delivering your DoorDash. It's hard to say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm with you.
Also joining us from Cigar Coop is William Cooper. How you doing, Coop?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Looking forward to this tonight.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say tonight.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Oh God.
Hopefully, your camera doesn't drop on you, or
What?
more specifically,
Yeah,
your
the
microphone.
camera did drop. That's what
Yeah.
happened. Well, it didn't drop. I disconnected it, and now I
Yeah.
can't get it reconnected. So,
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes.
yeah, it's on.
Um, so for those who have seen this before, or those who have not seen this before, we take this as an opportunity, well, where the kind of the end of 2024 cigar year is kind of wrapped up. There's still little odds and ends that need to happen to officially close it, but I think we're far enough along that we can have a kind of a educated discussion around how the cigar year went, our thoughts on it, and get it all wrong so that people can complain to us after the show that we got this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, and this wrong. So
Aaron, we're live. They can complain live in the comments if they
they
want to.
can, but not everybody watches live.
That's fair.
They like
Yeah,
to, listen in small chunks
yeah.
and other stuff like that. So, but this is from the cigar media side of things. So, retailers, manufacturers, consumers, you guys can all have your own opinions and share that and tell us how wrong we are tonight. So, um, I would ask what everybody's smoking, but I think everybody's not smoking that because they wanted to smoke and they couldn't smoke, or they're smoking an alternate cigar because they couldn't find the cigar they were looking for. So, Coop, I think you're probably the only one that's like really dialed in tonight. So,
Yeah.
what
Well,
do you got?
I'm gonna go with the last two cigars of the year. I'm gonna go with the Perdomo 30th anniversary Maduro Epicure, and I'm
Nice.
gonna follow it up with the My Father Labors You 100 Años.
Oh,
There you go.
legendary.
No, I have no receipts.
Okay.
Sorry, but I
Yeah.
have no receipts. Just so you know, yeah.
Well,
So,
I
but they
mean, who
were
knows where
purchased.
those
Yeah.
came from then,
Yeah.
really?
Exactly.
And Eric, what are you chewing on tonight?
Yeah, unfortunately, since I am not in studio, I have the Hoya de Nicaragua Classico Original, which I will
Mm.
be enjoying without lighting since I'm in the basement.
Yeah. All right,
What are you
John,
gonna do?
what was your alternate?
So my alternate tonight is going way back. Fortunately, I was able to find it and check it in on Cigar Dojo tonight. Eric assured me he's like, no, we got everything, and he was right. They did have it. This goes all the way back. I think it's like 2012, 2013. It's the Ezra Zion FHK. And this is, I believe, the Lancero. And I don't know if we're gonna go Lancero time tonight. So if we don't, I'll have to. I've got some cigars next to me on standby just in case.
There you go.
Are you smoking, Aaron? Or are you skipping tonight?
I'm not smoking.
Okay.
I'll be reviewing tomorrow morning, so I
Oh
kind of like
yeah,
to
yeah,
lay
yeah.
off the night before, kind of a thing. So,
I got you.
yeah, I'll skip it tonight. All right, so let's kind of just hop into it. So the way we like to start is we actually start about talking about cigars. So we'll get into all the other stuff that happens around cigars a little bit later, but we'll start out talking about cigars because that's the right thing to do. And we're going to talk about the surprises that maybe we smoked or came across this year. Then we'll go to Negative Town, but we'll start on the positive side of things. So we'll just kind of open it to like individual cigars or brands that maybe didn't have high expectations, or maybe a cigar that didn't have high expectations, but just kind of maybe popped up, grabbed your attention, something like that. And I'll leave it open to anybody that wants to hop in. I don't need to necessarily go round table because I have a couple that we can go through. So, anybody have any surprise cigars or surprise brands this year that kind of jumped out to them?
Right. Go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
I'm gonna kick it off with Domain cigars.
Coop, literally first on my list, Domain cigars. That's so funny.
Right. Esteban Diesla, who was with the Nica Sueño factory, left Nica Sueño a couple years ago. He has now formed his own factory with a guy by the name of Daniel Lentz. They come out with a couple of new releases last year. The Domain Neutrons are one in particular. And I haven't been the biggest Esteban Diesla fan over the years, but I'm not saying I didn't like his stuff, but I was really waiting for that breakout cigar from Esteban, and that was the one. That Neutron, to me, in a year of San Andreas being very weak, that was one of the highlights for sure.
I wholeheartedly agree. That was on my list, and I don't think it say like surprise. It's just I like to try new brands. So when I try a new brand, I go in with no expectations, and they come out with a cigar that's a banger. I'm like, where did this come from? And that's kind of the fun. That's the fun part of reviewing cigars for me, is when you come across a new cigar brand, new to you, and you try one of those cigars, and you're like, yeah, these are really good. Spread the word. How about you, Eric? Is anything stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised with the Orthodox from Black Label Trading.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good cigar.
I've never not liked Black Label Trading. In fact, I've always liked Black Label Trading, but there's never been that one cigar that just like, oh wow, that's like right up my alley. And I'm also I'm not a huge like Maduro guy. I typically I'm usually in the sort of the natural or even Connecticut realm of things, Connecticut shade realm of things. And so when I had that cigar, I was shocked. I just love this cigar. It's so warm and inviting, and really, really love that one. Also, when I first smoked the warped Cocodria, I wasn't sure if I liked it. But then as the year went on, I fell in love with that cigar eventually. And so speaking of that, then I would say my two brands that kind of surprised me the most this year are Warped and Black Label Trading, just because I thought they came out with some really good releases as far as cigars go. Like the cigars themselves were really, really good, in my opinion. For me, from my palate.
Yeah, I'll echo what Eric said. Certainly about. I mean, listen, I'm at this point I'm the resident Black Label Trading Company fanboy. I think it's safe to say. But I think there's like you're used to. You're like, yeah, he puts out good stuff. But like you said, Eric, I mean, the other two releases from them that like, and Aaron had to like remind me, like, hey, you really like these cigars. This is probably your favorite brand of the year. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. I really like those cigars. But the Paper Crane was kind of earlier in the year.
Yeah, that was on our list.
Blew me
too.
away. And then I guess they like to bookend little Petite Corona, and I like Petite Coronas, but I'm not going into a Petite Corona expecting like big flavor explosion. I'll tell you, the Intergalactic Event Edition.
Yeah.
I mean, no receipts, but Aaron was or is sitting on a couple of 5-packs, because I was like, I'm gonna try some more of those Petite Coronas, but also I want to try it in the Robusto Extra. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think they weren't a surprise for me, Black Label, because they've been having some good years. I mean, they had an incredible year. The one point I'll go back with Domain is how many times you have a new cigar company with a new factory come out of the gate like that. That was kind of like how I looked at it.
Yeah.
But I do agree with what you guys said about about Black Label and Black Works. It was by far, I think, the best year they've had. And Orthodox, to me, I just reviewed that one, and I thought it was a real throwback to what they did,
Mm.
like originally, but yet
Mm.
it was something different, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
didn't just, it tastes like the old stuff. It just had that vibe of the dark boldness that we were used to when Black Label started.
I was also glad that it wasn't some sort of crazy barber pole. It's like, enough, enough,
I heard,
enough with
I
the
heard, I
crazy
heard you
barber.
talking about that.
Speaking of smaller brands, so Jay London actually the brand John from Jay London, I think he's the J in Jay London, actually came up to Calgary of all places, and the importer messaged me and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know, I'm just hanging out." He's like, "You want to smoke some cigars at your lounge because it's freezing cold?" I'm like, "Sure." He's like, "Can I bring John from Jay London?" I'm like, "Of course you can." And so I think I only had experience, Aaron, of one of the cigars this year, and of course he brought a fistful, so I worked through the portfolio. I really liked the Connecticut, and I had a couple of other the telephone booth series, and I don't think I really appreciated the brand until I got a chance to sort of smoke them here in my lounge, and then go to an event and smoke some more. So that was pretty cool. Kind of getting that one-on-one time with a brand owner. I mean, even at the trade show, it's not really like that. So
He's a cool guy. Yeah, we had him on the show last year. He's a cool guy
that
for sure,
was a good
John.
interview.
Yeah, I did. I liked him a lot.
hmm Aaron, what about
Yeah,
you?
cigar for me that kind of jumped out is Connecticut, which are usually well, not usually, I mean that's kind of up my alley, but I'm pretty discerning as to what I come across. But um the Bentley White out of Hoyt,
Mm.
Nicaragua,
Oh,
was a bit of a surprise to me. And we'll kind
for
of
a
talk
few
about maybe
reasons.
some of the other reasons that in the next segment. But that was my second Bentley that I tried, and that was definitely a different experience than what I had in the first one. So, Hoyt and Nicaragua makes good Connecticut shade offerings. So it was just kind of another one of those that they kind of put together. And it's kind of got that little extra Nicaraguan oomph to it, but it's not over the top or anything like that. I wouldn't consider it like a one of those newer overpowering interface Connecticut's, but it's not like a mild traditional Connecticut either. So it's kind of in that mid-range spot. So it was a good fit. So that
Also,
was one that jumped out for me.
three out of four of us scored it the same, which that in of
Yeah,
itself is very unusual. Like
right.
usually there's going to be small deviations, but yeah, I mean, it did well.
Yeah. And also the new Romocraft Cro-Magnon with the
The
Pennsylvania
PA,
broadleaf wrapper.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes when that kind of occurs where, they have to make a tweak to the blend or
yeah.
a change like that, usually it doesn't work out. But this seemed like it worked out, kind of for the better, in regards to that wrapper change. So, that was nice to see, and have to see kind of what the availability of, how long of a run that turns out to be. But
Yeah.
that was also kind of a nice surprise for me.
Yeah, and I mean the thing about, I mean, I like broadleaf, and I would say that broadleaf has usually got a much higher percentage of hitting for me than Pennsylvania broadleaf does, because I find that, I mean, first of all, you just can't switch it. Like you just can't swap in Pennsylvania broadleaf because it's a very different taste. And so I also surprised, but in a good way, that I feel like the Chromag with the Pennsylvania broadleaf is more balanced than the original one, if that makes sense. Like I just feel like the cigar overall, consistently from first third to last third, is just a lot more consistent, a lot more balanced, and I like the original. So yeah, it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
Another sur
oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say another surprise for me was that there are actually some good anniversary cigars this year. Usually
Yeah,
that's not the
so
way
I
it
got
works
that on
out.
my notes. Yeah.
So the Casada 50th was a pretty nice cigar, and then the LFD 30 years is another nice cigar. So um, a lot of times for me, the anniversary cigars just
No, don't
aren't
do it.
stand out enough, from or they're completely departure from like the profile of the brand, and it just seems like where they go to a different factory for that and things like that, and it's just like it's a complete miss for me. But these were nice offerings this year, so I really enjoyed those.
So what's so funny about that? I mean, we've obviously been doing this for far too long together, but I've got in my notes, it's hard for me to get excited for anniversary cigars because they're so inconsistent. Like you get
Yeah,
and like you said, they go to a different factory and say, why would you go to a different factory if you've been putting out cigars with this factory for 10 years? Like they're your partners. Why wouldn't you showcase that? So I might, and I have to look at our scores, but I think because the anniversaries that came out all seem to like hit, I think on average, this might be the best year for anniversary cigars in terms of at least how we scored them. And I looked at the scores and I'm like, I mean, it wasn't like a ton of anniversaries got released, but the ones that did get released scored really well. So I was like, you only throw 3 passes, you make 3 passes, get 100% completion rating. So.
Yeah, there you go. Any other cigars or brands that jumped out at you guys this year?
You know, I know Steve's getting a lot of love these days, and maybe he doesn't need that. Maybe we got to deflate him a little bit. But the bronze back was a good release. And I think he kind of brought it out as sort of a more affordable, more approachable Umbagog. And we smoked it at the show. Well, you didn't smoke at the show, Aaron, but we smoked at the show. And I was like, boy, I know we're at the show, but this is really good. And I think all the guys in the coalition were like, this is really good. Smoked another one at the house. And we're like, this could be top in the cigar of the year charts this year. And then did the review. I don't think my review score was quite as good as the show, but still a very enjoyable cigar. And yeah,
I just want to say I called it before the show.
That's right.
I did. I said that was going to be the cigar that was going to take it. I said it, and I was kind of laughed at by Steve. Steve's like, you're nuts. No one's going to go for an Umbagog,
No one's going to buy these.
No one's going to buy this.
Like, yeah. A weird band. Nobody even really likes Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust.
But I thought he was going with the time was to strike right with Umbagog had always done pretty well for him, and why not come up with something that was like an enhanced or a better Umbagog, and he did. And like you said, it was really good to show. Now, the review, I had a few inconsistencies with the review. It still got an 89 for me, which is not bad, right? But it did miss my list. But nonetheless, I kind of see why this cigar's resonated with so many people. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good. We thought the same thing at the show. We were like, whoa, okay, like this has like a little bit more of a mapley warmness than some of Steve's stuff that can be kind of minerally and just really liked it. And then, it's approachable, it's affordable, it's good. That was a great release by him, man.
Right.
All right, any other ones, guys? We can flip the coin here.
Let's go to Complaint Town. I'm ready.
Oh, no. There we go.
Town.
Yeah, so ready.
Coop's ready.
Yeah.
He's ready.
All right, so let's flip the coin to the other side. So cigars or brands that were disappointments for you. Maybe you had high hopes or a particular cigar kind of piqued your interest and you had a chance to smoke it and it just didn't float your boat. What was on that list?
I'll lead off because we were just talking about it, but Bentley White Edition, such a great experience. Bentley Green Edition. Oh boy. I mean, I'm glad we smoked the Green Edition first, but I don't think either of us were really a fan. And I guess, again, I think it's good that we smoked both of them, and it's good that we smoked them in the order we did, because really just opposite spectrums of the experience and for cigar reviews. But we'll keep an eye on Bentley. I think they're going to do good things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I don't even know if this was this year. Was the Crown Heads Coronetta this year or was that last year?
Yeah, it was this year.
Yeah.
Not good. And
well, there was two of them.
Two
of them.
They were both not good.
Not
They were disappointing. They were disappointing. They really were disappointing.
And here's a real disappointing thing for me on that one. Where are they going with the branding on these things? Like the branding on that wasn't up to par in my opinion for Crown Heads, and the die cut was in such a way that it the wings flip out, and they catch on things, and it's so weird. Crown Heads, like we do these shows, whether you guys are on mine or I'm on yours, and it seems like every other year we're either loving Crown Heads,
right,
like they've done the most incredible year of all time, or we're like super frustrated with them. And this year, I'm super frustrated with them. I just don't know what direction. They used to have this kind of cool like either musical or old western kind of theme to everything, and now it's just all over the place. Now that last thing that they did, was it like the cow or something? I can't think of the name of it. Blue.
Belgian
Belgian
blue.
Blue.
Yeah, Belgian Blue. It's pretty good. It was
That's what I've
good.
heard. I've heard
Yeah.
good things about that. I haven't
So
smoked.
good job, Crown Heads. You finished strong, and so I'm not gonna totally freak out. Like that was actually a pretty solid release. Cornetta, not so much.
The first edition of this cigar caught us all by surprise in a really positive way. The Fonseca, and then they followed it up with the Fonseca MX, and I was like,
Mm.
this doesn't even taste like it should be in the same cigar line because the profile is so radically different. If I'd smoked the original Fonseca and then smoked the MX with the band off, I don't think I could have put them as the same brand because it's just so much heavier and earthy and just toasted. And I was really let down just because I think that first Fonseca sort of changed my expectation of Fonseca as a brand. And so I was like, okay, I think they've got a really cool idea of where they're going to take this. So I was looking for, maybe that's the problem, is I was looking forward to it. And so my expectations were a little bit higher than they should have been. But and it's not like it wasn't a bad cigar. It's just, I think that first Fonseca release, the new release, was really good.
Yeah.
And so, I was kind of hoping for that, but
Right.
this is just okay.
Go for it,
Coop?
Coop. We can see you all like biting your lip and ready to go, man.
I don't think I've ever disclosed this as because I've had it recently, but the Toscana Brenta was absolutely one of the biggest disappointments I've ever had of a cigar. That was that PCA collaboration they did, and someone at Toscano decided, let's do a cigar without fire cured, the Italian fire cured. They're using air cured tobacco, and it was terrible. I, I I can't believe PCA put their name on that cigar. The shape is terrible to smoke. It's a small kind of like figurado. It was such a disappointment. I can't, and I wanted to like it. I love the fact that they were doing this thing with Toscano, the Italian company, but huge disappointment. As far as that goes, I wouldn't even. I don't even want to put that cigar to my lips again.
Wow.
Because I had expectations that this was something. Hey, Toscano's doing something with air cured tobacco. It's not that. It's not. And here's the thing. It's not their core competency. Stick to your core competency. You make great Italian fire cured cigars.
Yeah.
And I would just stick with that. Um, and then I'm just gonna say this is nothing personal. Uh, Aganorsa was a big disappointment for this year. They didn't land. Their factory didn't even land on my list this year, which I cannot remember the last time Aganorsa as a factory didn't land on the list for me ever. I will say the exclusion to that may be the Arsenio, which I haven't that didn't get reviewed for this year. But I still was a little disappointed with the Arsenio because I had recently smoked some of those old Arsenio Golds, those red labels, which are so good, right? And then when I go and smoke the new Arsenio, it just wasn't like that old Arsenio, and so it was a disappointing year for me because at least while I've been critical of Aganorsa, they've always, as a factory, have landed on my list, and this year they didn't even land anything on the list this year.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go with the Gurkha Tysons.
That was my. I have that review coming up too. That's another one.
These are cigars. These are cigars blended for non-cigar smokers. So, if you don't smoke, you'll probably like these. But if you do smoke, you won't like these. So they're just not good cigars. I don't understand what the deal was. They're super expensive. They're not. They don't taste good. I think the construction was kind of iffy on them too. This is just like a money grab or something like that. And to get a celebrity within your brand or something like that. Like this is, if you want to see the wrong way to do a celebrity cigar, this is the wrong way. If you take in Guy Fieri with the Espinosa as the right way to do it, like this is like the complete opposite direction. So, nothing about it I think was done well. So I'll spread the blame to all parties.
I'm perplexed by that whole project, right, to begin with, right? I understand it was a licensing deal and all that, right? Juan Lopez has a pretty good palate, in my opinion. I've always kind of, respected his palate and stuff like that. And, I know they've always had pretty good marketing at Gurkha. And to me, the cigar fell down as far as performance went. And the marketing kind of fell down a little too because there was no excitement around, really this was being released for the Jake Paul fight. And there was no excitement when that fight came around. No one was talking about at Lazona. Everyone's smoking Lazonas. I get that, but no one was talking about those cigars at all. Around the fight. So I don't know what went wrong there. And they're good folks, and I like those folks and everything, but something definitely missed here.
Yeah, definitely disaster.
Yeah, you gotta have. I mean, if you're gonna bring in a celebrity, they have to be somewhat committed to this project, and they don't have to go, full on Guy Fieri necessarily, because that's a totally different animal altogether. But like, you look at James Hetfield, and he's smoking the cigar before the show. Like, at least, he's somewhat involved, and so that's good. But this was just like, oh, we're gonna throw the name on. He's gonna show up at PCA, and that's as far as it gets.
Yeah, Eric, I'd even argue that there was more buzz around the single store release with Strike Force than the Tyson ones in terms of people just getting excited about the cigar. And that's a testament to everyone involved with that, obviously, you and everyone else. But I'm just saying, Tyson should have had a much more global national appeal with the amount of distribution they had with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
here's
please.
one. Have you guys smoked this? I was super excited about this cigar, and I'm gonna try it again. But it is the new Cameroon EP Carrillo.
Have not
Have you
smoked
had
it
it?
yet.
I
Does it feel
have
like you're
smoked
holding
it.
air right now?
I smoked it at the factory.
Is it really
So-
light?
Is it got aerogel on
No,
it? No.
but it
Doesn't
just
have to?
wasn't.
Oh,
It
okay.
didn't have any of the Cameroon. I don't know. I was expecting something great
It,
because
di-
this
it didn't
line
smoke like
is.
Cameroon. When I had it down at the
Yeah.
factory, it didn't smoke because Ernesto gave me the Endure. He didn't tell me at the time there was Cameroon, but I never suspected there was Cameroon in it.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah,
nice.
I'll give it another shot. I was so excited about that one. I thought, oh man, because I love good Cameroon, and I was just like, no, this ain't it.
One of the cigars I was going to mention, and somebody who's been around for a very long time, the Eladio Diaz before and after Passion.
Pass.
Just for a guy who's got an amazing palate and has done some absolute amazing cigars prior to his new brand, that was just so flat for me.
Oh my goodness,
expecting
I
a lot
was
more.
hugely disappointed with that.
Oh.
Because I think we bought those cigars together, Aaron and I, at the time. And I reviewed it too, and I had the same reaction as you did. I mean, that's his first core line. I'm like,
Yep.
If this is what you're going to mark, I don't know if he's not getting as good tobacco. I can't figure out how he's gone so far away from the days of Davidoff. It just, to me, it was a miss.
Yeah.
And then the last one I have, we'll go past Cigar Negative Town. The Louisiana Group of 5 RB.
You didn't like that?
I was not a fan.
Oh, I love that cigar.
Yeah, and I think there's been a few people that have loved it. I wasn't a fan. I don't think Aaron was a fan. I can't remember what Seth felt, and I don't want to speak for Seth, but I don't know. I think, again, maybe it's expectations, right? Because I see Dion coming out with something, and I get excited about it because I like Louisiana, and I've historically, when I walk into a humidor in the States, I just blind grab whatever Louisiana is on the shelf. Like, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
898, 88, doesn't matter. It's going to be good because it's a Louisiana. So I think maybe there is a bit of a built-in expectation that I'm expecting some of the new stuff to perform like some of the stuff he's released in the past. But it was just kind of, it was okay. But, it didn't stand out for me like I was expecting. I was expecting it to be a banger, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that didn't love that until right now.
There you go.
Well, this is the group that's gonna not like it. So
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't like cigars.
Yeah.
I don't get
so.
I don't get the the bias against Agenor. I don't get it, but what are you gonna do?
What are
I
you gonna
got
do?
I got one other disappointment of
All
a
right.
cigar because I just kind of finished the review of this, and I think Eric, you liked it, and I just couldn't like it.
Hmm.
It's the Chancellor by Adventura.
Hmm.
What? I just smoked that
Yeah.
yesterday. That
Yeah.
is a great cigar.
It was
You're
I,
horrible.
I
crazy.
I know there was such high. I mean, this was supposedly there's this unique tobacco that Adrian Acosta's father's using, and I don't know. It just didn't click with me. And I know you liked it. I'm like, and maybe it's me. Maybe it was
I've
me.
bought boxes of that cigar,
I think
man.
I
I
heard you
love it.
say that. That's why I was surprised.
Well,
Um,
just to back Coop up, I'm a huge fan of what Aventura has been doing.
yeah,
I mean, the Queen's Pearl
Queen's
is
Pearl is one of the greatest cigars I've ever had. Yeah,
magical tobacco dust.
yeah.
The Chancellor was just so disappointing for me. Again, coming off the Queen's Pearl, I was like, here's another great cigar, and I was disappointed. I was very disappointed.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because like I said, Queen's Pearl and even the King's Gold was very good
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I had such high expectations with this one, and it just didn't. It's not that it was the flavor wise, it just didn't hit with me.
So as
Where's
much
the
as I was
where?
pumping up anniversaries earlier, I'm gonna go to the flip side with anniversaries. I had quite a disappointing anniversary cigar, and that was the Rojas 10th anniversary.
Mm,
I'm not sure many people have smoked this cigar, but um, first off, the cigar is a Toro, almost like a traditional Toro, maybe 6x52. But uh, Noah Rojas has deemed himself the king of small gauge, right? And I just don't know if you're the king of small gauge while your anniversary cigar is a Toro. It should be something that's a small ring gauge. But it just was not like I don't know. It was just like he has some really good cigars, but this was just
hmm
absolutely not good. I don't know what happened to it or what was going on, but it was just a miss. And I don't know. For an anniversary cigar to land so flat, it just kind of boggles my mind. You've got to make it something special, and it was just a complete mess.
Yeah,
No.
I didn't
Yeah, I
have
feel
that
like
one.
yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we smoked it. Like a Lancero or a Corona Extra or a Super Corona or something like that. Because yeah, he's historically his smaller ring gauge stuff has like we've all been fans. I mean, I think you know June is probably on the mailing list, so it was a little odd to have a large Toro like that.
I don't like when a company does an anniversary cigar and they get away from what got them there, right?
Yeah.
And you can say Noel got him there with the small King of Small Keys. Like for example, when Dion did like an anniversary cigar, whether it was ECGJ or Epine, he's kind of always or Hought 10. I mean, he kind of just always stays in what got him there,
Yep.
and that's why I think he's done great with that. Even Casada with the 50th, again, it was kind of their bread and butter.
Yep.
They didn't try to do something radically different. So, but yeah, I just think when you try to stay away when you stray away from that for your anniversary cigars, it usually does not end well.
Yep. All right. Any other cigars you guys want to talk about, or do you want to go ahead and move on to the next segment?
All right, enough negative town.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some trends that we saw across 2024, and these can be different things. Anything that you saw that was a kind of a bit of a pattern with over the course of the year, and I'll kind of fire it up. But I think due to the lack of Connecticut broadleaf or broadleaf for anything of that matter, is the Mexican San Andres wrapper has really taken on the torch for Maduro cigars in 2024, and I'm gonna assume it's gonna probably carry on over into 2025. I know this is Coop's favorite rapper. I just think that it's being slandered this year in regards to how people are using it, and they're really going to make people not like this tobacco when it's usually good tobacco, but I think that the way it's being used is just not done well, and I think it's going to kind of turn some people off to it. And I'm curious your guys' thoughts on that.
What are they doing that you don't like?
They are allowing it to overpower the entire blend
That's
so that
kind of how it
it's
used to
like
be.
you're like just
That's how
throwing
it used to be.
a big chunk of like a dirt clod in your mouth and just chewing it up,
Mm.
right? So they're not building the blends to kind of work with that wrapper. Um, some of these I think some of these wrappers are just very potent, and the blends just can't stand up to them.
Yeah, I don't remember Coop if it was. It's been a while, but I feel like it was either 8 or 9 years ago where we had the same situation. There was just it was like literally
The
every
over
other cigar was Mexican San Andre, and honestly, like Aaron said, at the end of it, I was like, I don't want to smoke any more cigars with Mexican San Andre. Like it
It was that
literally, if
overpower. It was that
yeah,
overpowering. I remember, John. Maybe we were on a show way back in the day or something,
there you
talking
go.
about this exact topic, and it came full circle this year. It seemed like.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just I mean, the sad thing is, there's been some absolutely like I don't want to say Hall of Fame, but like truly amazing Mexican San Andrés cigars out there. But it's like we were talking earlier about Pennsylvania broadleaf. Like you can't just sideways substitute Mexican San Andrés for Maduro and just go with it and your blend's fine. Like you have to tweak the blend to make it work. And I don't know, man. It's unfortunate because it's such good tobacco when it's used right, and it's like Honduras. Like it's such good tobacco when it's used right, and it's so disappointing when it's used wrong. And unfortunately, I think it's going to continue because it's affordable and wrapped tobacco is expensive and hard to find. And we'll get into it later in the show. But challenges in Ecuador, I think if anything, we're going to see more Mexican San Andre, whether they're naturals or
Yeah.
Maduros, but it's going to be a lot more Mexican San Andre, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. That's why I go back to the Domain Neutron, which was such a I mean, it was just so good
Yeah.
because it
Yeah,
it
100%.
it showed what you can do with Mexican San Andres. And look, I was very big on this cigar, but it was technically a 2023 release. Is
Yeah,
Rocky Patel's Conviction, the hundred
yeah.
dollar cigar, was incredible. Okay, but it was a 2023. Rocky's one of the folks though who he seems to always he's been working well with San Andreas the last few years. But it was probably the least amount of San Andreas I had ranked high or even on the Coop list in many years, for sure.
One thing that is a positive trend, I was actually, first of all, shocked. I thought for sure going into this trade show in April, last trade show, 2024, that we'd see kind of a bunch of releases being held because it was a short turnaround from the previous trade show and we're going into New Orleans. It's a bit of a change. So I thought, okay, we'll see one or two things from a lot of companies, but they'll hold the majority of the releases to New Orleans. And it was the opposite. I mean, there was just new product everywhere. And then I think the thing that was pleasantly surprising is oftentimes when you see, especially at past trade shows, there's 5 products or 4 products on display. And it's like, when are they shipping? Well, October, September, November. And everyone we talk to, they're like, no, they're literally shipping right now. Like they're going to be in the retailer store by the time they get home from the trade show. I'm like, really? And yeah, there was like a ton of product that both hit the stores right after the trade show and hit the stores like in the weeks after the trade show. And I mean, I don't want to sound jaded, but like I was shocked at how well everyone seemed to turn around from the short trade show turnaround to get new product out in April and get it on the shelves available for sale.
They did a good job this
nice to
year.
see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there were a few that slipped out, but that's gonna happen. So
Hmm.
I won't hold that against anyone. But yeah, it definitely was a surprise that we had most of that stuff out by June, and then there was this big summer lull. Like we didn't
Yeah.
have anything shipping or anything new
Yeah.
in the summer. Yeah.
Did you guys think, because we are talking about anniversary cigars, and I was trying to, so, Aaron reminded me of the Rojas one, but do you guys feel like there was a lot of anniversaries cigars this year? Like
Yes,
higher number, lower number?
there was a
A
lot.
lot.
So you had like AJ 20th,
Padron
and just for
60.
Quality,
yeah,
Casada.
Uh,
Mm.
the
Yeah, there were.
technically law unions were an anniversary release, right? So you count
right.
those. Um, there was a God of Fire 25th anniversary that came out. So
Tatuaje released some more of the 10th anniversary stuff.
Warped had their 10th anniversary.
Yep,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
yep,
yeah. All 3 of those.
yeah.
Um, yep. And you're gonna see. I mean, it's gonna be a big year for anniversaries again this year because you got Monte Cristo, Romeo and Julieta coming.
Yeah.
And Raphael's already confirmed there's stuff coming with that. So that's a big one
Yep.
for sure.
trying to think of other. There wasn't really. I don't think there was necessarily a size trend this year. I mean, we saw
Yeah.
some Salamones, but nothing.
It wasn't a
Nothing that I
big
would
year for
call a trend.
Lanceros, actually, believe it or not. It was
Yeah.
a very quiet year for, even though I had
Mm,
two very highly ranked, they were actually ones from the year before. So, but I did have a big trend, and my trend was luxury cigars. So I've
Mm.
heard this like thing. I heard Garofalo talk about the McAuliffe effect, and I'm not just saying that people didn't go back and try to come up with less expensive cigars like Saka did, but when I looked at the list of cigars that were over $30 this year, I could just start rambling these off. And especially some over 100. The Monte Cristo Doble Diamante, the Opus X 2020s, the Davidoff Oro Blancos, and all the Davidoffs that came out. El Septimo had $100 cigar. Legends, La Union, La Flor 30 was a $30 cigar. I could go on and on with this list. It was a significantly bigger year for these higher end luxury cigars, more than I've seen ever. More than
Yeah.
I've seen ever, where people not this is independent from price increases.
mhm.
This is they're trying to tap into a luxury market like I've never seen the cigar industry try tap into it. And there was some companies that did it that have no track record of doing it either. And I'm not blaming them. Like, Luciano did the one with Peter James. It was actually a pretty good cigar. Warped came out with a $40 cigar. So these are companies that don't necessarily have the track record of doing that. Rocky didn't really have a track record of doing that either when he did his. And he also
That's
came out with Year of
true.
the Dragon, which was $35.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not faulting them, but we're seeing some companies like Davidoff, it's their bread and butter, and Fuente, they're in that space for a long time. But there's the other companies now trying to tap into that. Plasencia is probably the one that really is saying we want to be in that space. It's very clear, when they did the Ometepe, now they've done the El Año de Culebra. So
Yeah.
they're trying to. I think they want to be up there with the Fuentes and the Davidoffs for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, so you're saying over 30 Coop. I actually think you could probably even go a little higher. You could probably say over 40, over 50. I think at the start of the year it started slow because there was a lot of rumors, but it almost seemed like by the end of the year, every sort of large company had at least one or two over $75 cigars. And then, we saw kind of a smattering from medium-sized companies. Almost, every other medium-sized company had a cigar that was kind of priced over the $40 mark. So it was a lot. I mean,
I have it.
I don't want to
Yeah.
look at our finances at developing palates, but look at the average cigar price by the end of the year. I don't know if it went up or stayed the same or what.
So I have a thing coming out on Coop tomorrow, right? And there were 11 cigars over $60 reviewed on Coop last year.
Wow.
Way too much. Okay, I'm not looking for a badge of honor here. It's way too much. And when I looked at what the ROI is for those expensive cigars in terms
Right.
of traffic versus a $10 cigar, I gotta say I'm nuts to do that again. And I have several other ones still in the queue, and I'm like, that's got to end because it's not good business for me to do that. Is what I'm just telling you.
Yeah, well, I
Uh,
made the crack because Half Wheel was talking last week about their cigars, and I made the crack during the show that like I think it was 3 or 4 cigars because they do 3 cigar reviews per cigar, and I said, well, like between these 3 brands, you probably spent 40% of your yearly cigar budget across just these 3 reviews because 3 cigars times
yeah, yeah.
$100+ I mean, that adds up very quickly.
If you're doing a $100 review, right, it better get 10 times the amount of traffic as a $10 review. Is my point, right? To
Well,
be even,
I don't think it works like that.
I don't think it work, and that's why I'm like, why did I do this? It was just that has to change going forward. I
You
just
know,
don't see that. Yeah,
the
I don't
interesting
see
thing
that
about that
working.
Coop, because there's a lot of retailers at the show this year talking about it, and I think that in general, retailers were. I think what I heard anecdotally for feedback is they were not happy about the number of expensive cigars coming out. But my
They brought him
perspective
in.
was like,
They brought him in. A lot of these guys who
well,
complained. I can
that's
tell you
just
that.
it, right? I'm like, okay, so like you don't have like no one's, it's America, man. It's a free market. No one's putting a gun to your head. Don't bring them in, right? There's plenty of cigars out there that don't cost $100 or don't cost $75.
Yeah.
Like, don't bring them in. Don't to the consumers. Like, hey, if it's too expensive,
the guy I give
buy it.
respect to is
Like,
Dave
it's
Garofalo.
okay.
Yeah, Dave Garofalo is probably a guy who's spoken out against all these cigars. And for the most part, I don't think he's brought a lot of these in. So I got to give him, he's talking the talk there, you know. I got to give him credit on that. But others I've heard complain, and I see them in the stores. So I'm just saying, yeah.
But I mean, you know, to I don't single out's not the right term, Coop, but like the Le Bijou 1922, the 100 Años, I think they were like 18, $19, right?
14, about 14.
Yeah, 14.
Are they 14? Okay.
Yeah, I mean they're just
Uh,
one of the best bar. And this Perdomo's 12.50.
Yeah, so you know, like look, you know, I'm not saying don't go spend $75. I'm just saying, look, there's a lot of really good cigars in the market. So like, if you don't want to go spend $100 in a cigar, you don't have, like, again, no one's forcing you to, right? So like, I guess you know, I was hearing the complaining, and I'm like, okay, don't buy it. You know, like I don't go out and buy a $120,000 sports car because I can't afford it. I don't get mad because the sports cars are for sale. I just don't buy them.
You know, and like I said, I have to, if I'm going to complain about it, I got to certainly look in the mirror because I went and did this, you know.
Well,
I mean, 11 cigars over $60, and some of them were multiples.
now to be
And some of
fair,
them were, and by the way, they were
you found some good cigars in there.
They were the highest scoring price range too on Coop.
Wow,
So
there
they
you
were, a lot of them lived up to what they were.
Yeah.
But will I say they're worth the price? No. But they did live up. They were the best, some of the best of the best I did have this year.
All right. Any other trends you guys saw in 2024? We can get into some interesting industry items from the year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't a trend, right? But you know, obviously there was new leadership in all the trade organizations last year.
Yeah.
All three, right?
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was, yeah. So I mean, that was something that was, I think, a not a trend, but it was just, I think it was something. They all went with experienced leaders, is what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You know, which was instead of trying to find someone from the outside.
You know what was interesting about that, Coop? So I don't know if you call it a trend or not, but I think in the past we've seen long searches go on for, you know, 8+, 9+ months for you know, while that position is vacant. We've seen that happen multiple times in the past, and this is perhaps the first time we've seen I don't know if you call it a plan, but like a rapid deployment of personnel into that position, whether it's an acting role or a permanent role. Those vacated positions were immediately filled. So,
Except for CRA, that was like a 2.5 year old, but that was, yeah. But the other two were very quickly filled. When CAA and PCA, they moved quick on both of those. So
nice
I thought that was very nice to see. So I was happy about that, you know. And I think, like, I know all three of those guys, and they're good guys. So they're good. They'll be good leaders as well.
All right. Industry items that we found interesting. I'll start out with cigar construction.
oof.
How do you guys
Next.
felt cigars were constructed in 2024? Do you think it was better, same, worse than 2023?
I've heard you guys talk on shows. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
no. I was going to ask you.
About this, and I really haven't. I mean, it didn't seem to, but of course, you know, live in Colorado. Of course, you know, McTavish, you live in same kind of environment that I do, but
Mhm.
it's tough here no matter what year you're in with construction. But I personally didn't really notice like some sort of major downfall. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, well, so I'll agree with you. And again, this is anecdotal. I'll have to look at the data, and I'm actually really curious to look at the data. But like when I think about, because I kind of classified as like burn issues and then like draw problems, right? So like two kind of separate issues. And I think about like burn issues, and I don't really feel like there was any kind of more or any standout burn issues kind of this year versus last year. But I do feel like I was typing a lot more about draw problems this year than I was last year. Whether it's like, I can't think really a lot of loose draws, like a lot of like unusually snug draws, more than usual, I think, this year, to the point where it kind of became a trend where a kind of a perfect draw was maybe 1 out of 3, maybe 1 out of 4 reviews was a kind of in that perfect range. Everything else was somewhat into the resistance spectrum all the way to like snug. And I honestly got a little tired of writing about it because I don't want to be wasting my time talking about construction. I want to talk about how the cigar performs. But I think the issue with draw is it can have such a major impact on how the flavor performance is. You know, if you got a tight draw or a plug draw, it's kind of a bit of a drag.
It was definitely down this year. It wasn't at the levels of that, like coming out of the pandemic where we saw all these
Mm,
cigars being made at like alternate factories, and there were people, that was just a bad year. But there definitely was a dip from 23, and I can definitely say that. You just can't have the best year every year in cigars. This wasn't a better year in terms of construction. Do I want to say it was? But I want to say 21 and 22 was really that down point for me. And then there was a nice little upsurge at 23. Kind of came back down again this year a bit more towards, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I saw like a drastic change, but I will say it probably went down a little bit, like Coop said. I would be flip-flop from what John said is like me, it would be more for burn issues than draw
mm,
issues. Like I don't feel like I had a lot of issues with the draws. Mine would just be more like, cigars kind of going out like with no warning, just kind of like all of a
mm.
sudden it hit some pocket in the blend and just went out. So maybe a little bit more of that, but I don't know that I would say it was like it's anything crazy. But I don't know, see how the kind of things progress going forward.
Yeah. It seemed like though the factories, for the most part, that were doing good quality stuck with it this year.
Mm.
Um, I know, Aaron, you may have one in particular that you disagree with me on, um, but like we talk about Oveja Negra had a pretty good year in terms of their construct. Those factories that've
Oh
been
yeah,
doing it continue to seem to do it well. I thought Drew Estate, by the way, quality wise, had an excellent year. I
yeah, it's
really
true.
do. I think quality wise,
Very quiet. Yeah.
they just did have a lot of releases, but in terms of consistency this year, I was pretty impressed with them. And I think just because they didn't have a lot of new releases, it kind of fell under the covers a bit.
Yeah.
Same thing for Perdomo, I think too.
But,
Like, they had 3 major anniversary cigars, and I think construction wise, they were all.
They
Is it? I think that's the thing that annoys me is you have an anniversary cigar, and we've seen this in the past, where you come out with an anniversary cigar and you have construction issues, and it's like, okay, well, this is supposed to be kind of the showcasing cigar for your brand, and it's typically priced a little bit more premium. You would expect the construction would follow that. All 3 Perdomos, I thought were bang on.
Yeah,
So
I mean, this is just, yeah. I haven't had draw issues. I haven't had burn issues. I haven't had construction issues with any of these Perdomos. I've smoked a lot of them this year too.
he must
And
he must plug in his draw masters, I guess.
I mean, Eric and I've been on that tour. That tour is the QA, the QC
Yeah,
rather is
he
second
is
to
pretty
none.
crazy with the
Yeah,
QA. Yeah.
yeah, it really is. Yeah,
So I was joking with Eric a little earlier about that EP Creo he's holding, but I don't know if any of you guys have noticed, but I have noticed that all the cigars coming out of Casa Creo are now lighter than they used to be.
Hmm.
Um, there has been a change. I'm not privy to what that is, but the cigars are definitely lighter. And John has been weighing cigars now, and we can go back and pull the cigars that we did this year, but definitely a little bit less tobacco going into those cigars. And I don't know if that's to try to keep the draw in line or to save some tobacco to save costs or what's going on, but I've definitely seen a change from that particular factory.
they did a lot of box presses, and they tend to underfill
Mm.
those box presses. Is
Yeah.
what I'll definitely say. I haven't had necessarily had the issues you had, Aaron, with out of that factory, but and I haven't weighed them, but they did so many box presses this year. The Encore Black, now the Endure. But even those Parejo, you're right. Even those Parejos that they did with the Essence series seem light.
Yeah.
I just haven't weighed it, so I can't quantify a noble number on it.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't remember. I can't remember if the Hustler guys were doing it before me, and that's kind of what inspired me to do it, or I kind of did it around the same time as they did because I've been doing it. I think about 2 years now. But it was more so I just wanted to have hard data because, saying like it's got a light hand feel, that's, that's nonsense. Like you can kind of tell when a cigar
That
is light,
that's
but it's like,
that's why I don't
I
want to
don't
say
know.
that. Yeah, that's why I didn't want
Yeah.
to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
People have
So
been
that, I
telling
mean,
me that since high school.
ew,
Oh.
ew. No, I started doing I started weighing the cigar. So we had a data point, it's a verifiable data point. Obviously it's just one cigar. So it's not a sample. It's not a good sample size by any stretch of imagination. And I started using the Humidimeter Pro
Mm.
to measure the humidity. And again, it's just so that I can go back to it and say, well, like Aaron said, consistently, this factory is, X percent or X grams. I don't know what that'd be. I'd have to do the grams to ounces math for freedom ounces, but grams a little more accurate in this case, right? Because it's a smaller measure. But like, it feels light in your hand. You put it on the scale, and you're like, damn, that's a robusto, and it's coming in like a petit corona. And there was some toros that were coming in lighter than robustos, and I was like, oof, like, again, it's not a good sample size because we're I don't know, Aaron's not weighing his, so it's really just me. And one cigar out of a batch is not a good. I mean, it could be that consistently and we've joked about it. Consistently, I get the bad cigar out of the batch. It can happen.
That's
So
that
it's hard to
tariff.
say.
That's the tariff that we
Yeah,
put
That's
on
the
those.
tariff.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
27% tobacco is held back before it gets
Exactly.
shipped up. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, we already talked about the pricing a bit, so I think we can kind of skip over to that one. So, flavor bans. So,
Oof.
living in California kind of hit the state pretty hard. Um,
Mm.
I think it's yeah, kind of went in, and then it kind of like they voted again to like, are you really sure that you want to do it? Kind of a thing. That was an interesting little thing as well. But did that roll out anywhere else that really took it seriously as a something they were
Oh,
tackling?
Maybe Massachusetts was the other
yeah,
place.
Massachusetts. But I don't think it's rolled out. Correct me if I'm wrong, Coop. I think they've got it. It's past the first reading, and I think because Massachusetts, for whatever reason, seems to hate tobacco. I think there's a very good likelihood it's going to pass.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the state of that is.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not blaming the current leadership because these were sins committed by previous leaderships of the trade associations who basically did not fight the flavored stuff early enough. They waited too long on that, and they were sticking to the definition of a hand roll premium cigar, and it got too far. It got too far away from them to fight it, and then now it was a little too late, unfortunately, with some of this. So now they're behind the eight ball, and that's why you got to fight this stuff much earlier. And look, they didn't even. I remember when some of these flavored bands were coming up, and there was just
Yeah.
no commentary on anything with this. Now PCA was very clear; they changed their position on that. So I don't blame them, but I'm not blaming the current people. But I think previous regimes, this was a problem. They ignored this problem.
Yeah, I just had this conversation the other day at a Herf Coop, and I got a response that is kind of a typical response I get from a lot of retailers and from cigar smokers, and they're like, "Well, I don't smoke infused or flavored stuff, so it doesn't matter to me." And what I tell them is, I'm like, "Look, think of it like a castle, okay? You don't just have a castle. You've got a castle surrounded by a moat, surrounded by a drawbridge, surrounded by a little village with another wall, surrounded by, call it 4 miles of cleared forest so you can see guys coming.
Yeah,
And the problem is you've already let them come up to the village. They're already there. They passed tobacco 21. They've got deeming regs in place that are hopefully going to get reversed. So, now they're at the moat. You think of the flavored stuff as the moat. Well, if they pass flavor bans, well, now they're at the walls. So like there's no more gap between, them taking away flavored infused stuff and now they're coming after premium handmade cigars because there's nothing in between. That's going to like they're just I mean it's going to be a forever fight. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be fighting this when I'm 75 years old, but I mean, we're going to be fighting this for as long as we want to smoke cigars. And unfortunately, it means that, right now, flavored infused product is the moat. And if you let them pass the moat, they're coming for premium cigars. I guarantee it. And they're also, I mean, they're also coming for generational bans too. I mean, now that Tobacco 21, we all just kind of
laid down.
Put our
weapons down. Bear and I called
what?
it. Bear and I called it years ago. If you didn't fight for Tobacco 21, this was going to be the next step. We said it.
They're not going to stop.
We said it, and look at the smoking bans, right? How it went. Well, we just want to separate people out who are smoking from non-smokers. So they did that. And then it was, well, we don't want you guys smoking. Go smoke outdoors. So what happens? All these places build outdoor patios and stuff. And then, no, that's not good. You can't smoke in the outdoor patios. You got to smoke 25 feet away, right? So it was you give an inch, they take a mile back. Is what I'm saying.
Well,
and this is what happens.
Even with cigar lounges, Coop. I mean, my concern is, you can go to a cigar lounge, okay, but then they changed the rule to say, okay, we're giving an exemption for a cigar lounge, and you have to get renewal for the cigar lounge, which essentially means they can pull that exemption at any point. All they need to do is, sign a change to that, and all of a sudden you've got no smoking lounges anywhere. Speaking from Canada, it can happen very quickly.
Well, I've been to some places in the world, and I've traveled to countries where it's really hard to smoke.
Yeah.
Even Mexico got worse since I've been to Mexico. I'm just saying. So
didn't Italy just pass a was it Italy or was it France? I think it was Italy just passed an outdoor smoking ban in a bunch of different cafes.
Well, if it is, it had to be. I didn't find it hard to smoke in Italy outdoors.
Yeah.
And I was just there in August, so I'd have to check to see what
very
happened.
recent.
But
Wow.
Italy was tough. Italy didn't have lounges. That was the tough part. But I was able to smoke very easily in both Rome and Venice. So, but there were no lounges. So.
Yeah, I mean the one thing I will say is that because I think people are kind of looking at this from a federal perspective, and they're like, well, they're going to ban it federally, and I don't think that's realistic. I think it's a lot easier for lawmakers to either ban it at the county level, the civic level. I mean, there's been plenty of cities. I think that's kind of how it started in California. Was it Orange County was the first to enact it, and then it's just some of the other smaller counties, and then LA for the city said they were going to ban it, and then it became statewide. So, unfortunately, bad ideas tend to be infectious, and so we're talking about Massachusetts. There's another state, and I'm terrible at the legislative stuff, but I think it's Oregon or something that is also talking about flavored tobacco bans as well. So, I think there's a pretty good chance in 2025 we're going to see a lot more talk about it and a lot more legislation getting put forward.
I have the CRA guys on tomorrow's show, and I'm going to be asked. That's a question I have to ask them. Where are we with flavors right now?
Oh.
As well as I know we're going to talk about generationals in a second. So, but yeah.
All right. It's kind of switching gears severely, but retailer samplers from reviewers' top 25 lists. I'll preface this by saying, Eric, I know that you work with Smoke In on this, but it's not like it's kind of a smattering of cigars from your list. Like it's just the things that Abe carries because he doesn't carry everything that's like in your top 5 or your top 10. So it's just not possible for him to kind of put together that top sampler. So, but I think this year we saw a handful of maybe like YouTubers or something like that had like a full top 5 sampler at particular retailers. And I'm just curious, like, what does that conjure up in your mind when you see something like that? Do you feel like everything's above board in those situations, or do you feel like things might have been shaped that way? And nobody has to jump in if they don't want to. I don't want to make somebody talk about something.
I have a couple of thoughts on this. So again, Eric, your situation I think is very different. This is not, but I'll tell you why I've been approached to do this, and I've said no. I'm going to tell you why I don't do it. This is not to say someone else shouldn't do it, because I don't want someone basically saying, I put a cigar on a list to satisfy basically a retailer, right? So and there were some lists this year where there were 5 cigars and all 5 cigars were sold in the sampler. That's where this is the top 5, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, would you have put those top 5 in if you didn't have a retail partner who is going to brand a sampler for you? And from what I understand, all these folks did not monetarily gain from this, but they do gain publicity with this, right?
Yeah.
And the retailer benefits because the retailer is now, yeah, wow, this is on so and so's list, and I have it, so they're promoting that right now. So I've just kind of said, all right, you know what, I'm going to just decline it and just say, for me personally, no one can question me. I have to deal enough with sponsors and free samples, right? I don't need another headache, right? So, so I just recuse myself from that. But there were definitely some cases, and it was one online retailer in particular that seemed to be targeting a lot of these YouTube lists and a few blog lists as well. That I just like. It's just a little too much. It made me wonder.
Yeah.
I mean, my questions were, and obviously sites can do whatever they want. First of all,
Right.
just get that
Exactly.
right.
Say
Sites
whatever
can
they
do
want.
whatever they want.
Absolutely.
But I was kind of looking at it from, from our optics, from developing palates with developing palates to a sampler. And I think my questions were around, because I think, first of all, a lot of these samplers were available immediately following the announcement of the top lists. So it's like, okay, so how does that work? Like, are you giving the list to the retailer? Because I mean, for a lot of retailers, you'd have to give the list to the retailer for them to prepare the pack, I assume, in advance, because you got to do some stuff in the e-commerce to set it up, and that's fine. But like Coop said, they're not gaining monetarily. Okay, but like, one of the big issues we already deal with as it stands right now, and I mean, it's constant. It's been constant for the 13, 14 years I've been doing this now, is like, well, you guys are getting paid. It's like, I mean, I wish I was getting paid for sure, but I think it plays into that rhetoric that's sort of already out there that, you guys are kind of in the pockets of manufacturers. So, if they send you a cigar, it's going to get a good rating. And that will kind of go into the next topic we're going to talk about. But, that's why, Coop, you kind of started the process of just being very transparent about data and saying like, hey, this is our scores for, our sponsors. These are our sponsors. This is their score. We started doing that a couple of years ago, really for the same reason, to say, okay, like, if there is bias, we want to know about it, right? Like, you can't eliminate bias unless you're aware of it. So to see that, for us, I think I don't think we have any interest in doing that, because that does feed into the narrative of like, well, you get your cigars from them and then all of their cigars are on your list. So is it only cigars that they carry that are on your list? You know what I mean? And like, it raises ugly questions, and we already have to deal with kind of enough of that without feeding into that, is kind of where my head was at, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of was, like I said, the sampler sponsor thing is something we have to deal with every year. It's already enough of a headache. And this year, by the way, you could beat me up because the sponsor numbers were significantly higher in average scores. But I'm hoping over the years you've seen that the data goes up and down, and it relatively evens out. But this year was a year where it was heavier scores for the sponsors. I ain't gonna lie, it happened. I mean, I'm not saying that was. Look, I'm not excusing it, because there's no reason why they can't be better cigars in a year, but it happens, and that's. You have to be transparent on it.
I mean, I'll give a kind of a really good example, that because Eric, you guys partnered for the Wagashi, and you have a very strict policy that Dojo branded or Dojo collaborations aren't eligible for your Cigar of the Year list. Despite that, and I think it goes to say, maybe the strength of the cigar or the strength of kind of the people that are buying it, it still landed number 10 on the consensus list, right? And like, you guys said, look, it's kind of a conflict, and you've done this every year. You've said, look, it's a conflict of interest. Yeah. We're going to recuse this. And, I respect that. Absolutely. And I totally understand that, because it's like, well, we think it's the best. Otherwise, why would we sell it? Why would we have done it?
Right.
Kind of not really impractical in this situation. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, of like, you start to erode a little bit of that. I think if you start having that relationship, and again, it's one of those things of the perception of something becomes the reality, despite the fact that may not be the reality at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think anything can be like pushed too far. If obviously if we were putting our own releases in our list, that would seem super weird. The the sampler thing, I mean, I don't see a big deal with that, honestly. It's like it's five of the five cigars from that list, and we do like a Flavor Odyssey show on each of those cigars, so we want to try to make it easy for people to pair along, over the 5 weeks. And so they buy that sampler, and then now they're set for the 5 weeks of doing that. It just makes it fun and easy to do. But I could see where if you had a sampler and it was five cigars and they were your top five cigars, that might look kind of weird. So I guess it's just like anything, things can be
Yeah.
things can be pushed too far and look weird. Some people won't do it at all, like you guys, that's cool too. Like I respect that as well. Just kind of one of those things where you just got to be careful of
Yeah.
not pushing it so far that it looks uh, unethical.
Kinky is the word I use. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I think you nailed it, Eric, with that. For sure. Like I said, mine, and I was very clear. It was a personal decision I made. In fact, I didn't even tell the other Coop guys who do lists if they could do whatever they wanted on that. It was just this was my personal choice on this. Is what I just made the call on for me, and that's. But at the same time, I think, like I said, there's if you have some other reasons, and if certainly a guy like Abe, you got to remember he carries such a large inventory, right? Too. So, I mean, but the ones I saw were a much smaller retailer. It's
Yeah,
a
but I
much
mean,
smaller set. That's kind of
even
where I was
even with
going
how
with it.
much Abe carries, Eric's list really he couldn't cover
Yeah.
that
Couldn't
much of
cover
it
that.
just because of how many different cigars are out there
Different
and
Yeah,
what they
brands,
yeah,
picked for their list. Like,
exactly.
you know,
That's exactly
and
the point. I
we're
agree.
kind of I mean, it's kind of ironic. We almost wish we could make a list off of our top cigars, because we kind of have the reverse problem, which we're talking about today, is that half the time Aaron can't even get the cigars. Like, can't even get three or four of the cigars from the same retailer. So it's like,
Yeah,
like a
we have that
retailer
trouble.
like Abe is, yeah, we have trouble getting, like, having trouble putting an order together just to get the new cigars to smoke in the first place, let alone have them on a list where you could sell
True.
them. So yeah.
yeah. All right, so talking about the consensus, which came out today, kind of just some general thoughts from you guys on this list. What do you think about the list that came out? And any kind of
Did you catch that, Eric? Did you see it at all?
I did. As I saw the Wagashi made it. I was
Top
shocked.
10, baby.
We've never had one of our collabs on there, I don't think. I mean, I don't study it or
Didn't
anything.
did the Dogma make it one year? Or am I
Oh,
just
maybe.
misremembering that?
No, you could be right.
I feel like
Um,
But
it
I think
did.
they counted Dogma maybe kind of branded stores under
Oh,
Crown. I'm not sure. I'm
yeah.
not sure. I'm not
I
sure.
think you're right, Coop. I think it got rolled under Undercrown, so it
yeah,
wasn't
I'm
Dogma
not sure either.
specifically. Yeah.
So I don't I always look at it. I always look at the list because it's interesting, but I don't that's about as far as I take it. But that's with any list, I mean, I take a look at it, I take a peek at it, and then I was very pleasantly surprised to see that on there, which was super cool. And I shared that, and all that was exciting.
Good job I mean, good job, Eric. Because I mean, you guys launched that cigar. It went
Yeah,
national, and good job. It was a good job.
yeah, it was
Yeah, very
fun.
short time frame too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You deserve a lot of credit on that. Because there was soccer cigars that didn't get it. Okay, I
Mm,
mean, like Red Meat Lovers Club never got on there, right?
mm.
That's true. That was a good
Still
cigar.
Stars didn't. I mean, so there's a lot of there's cigars that Saka has done that have never landed on the consensus, and you did. So I think there's something to that.
Yeah, I don't even. I guess I didn't look at enough lists to see that. It must have been on a few more than I knew of. I shared a few of those as I saw them. With the Wagashi showing up on a couple of them, but I didn't think it would be on enough to make it on there. And until today, just like I saw that, and I was kind of surprised by that. But it's pretty cool.
I actually thought it
And
might win the consensus early on. I was like predicting it might win it.
oh,
Um, I still was doubting if Umbagog would do it. So, but it's still in
mm.
the top 10. So good job. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve just does such a good job of, you know, getting people excited about his product that
Yeah.
he's the master at that for sure.
Well, and he kind of had two, right? Because the Dondurma was the other sort of exclusive that showed up on the list as well. And I think to the surprise of the retailer, he was like, "What is going on? Why? What? How did?
Why is
He
this
didn't
on
even.
here?
He
I got to
didn't
give
even
Ronnie
know.
credit on that.
He didn't even know. He's like, "What list is this?" It's like a consensus. He's like, How did these guys get this cigar?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, go look at the list and see who smoked it." He's like, I don't understand." Like, he was flabbergasted that enough people bought it and smoked it and reviewed it for it to even be eligible to be on the list. So
Mm.
yeah, I guess that goes to show, like you said, Steve does a pretty good job, obviously, marketing him. I don't want to take anything away from the retailer either, but you know,
Yeah, no doubt.
I think one of the surprises for me, um, it is kind of a big list, but at the same time, it's not a big list. So it's 50 different outlets and it's 51 lists in total, which seems like a lot. But then Charlie mentioned, because you'd think, look at the list, you're like, well, obviously Dunbarton is, the number one factory. They've got 3 cigars in the list, pretty high. And
Four. They had
that
four.
wasn't, oh, they had, yes, I can't even keep track. They had 4.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, obviously there's the factory company brand of the year, right? But they weren't. It was Habanos, and it was only because kind of one guy who does the lists
Had all
did
Habanos.
it was all Habanos. So you add up the points, and the way that works is 325 points from one list ended up kind of pushing. And I don't know, Charlie talked about, maybe looking at that from a different perspective, because maybe that's not fair. Like, maybe, you can't have one list swinging it that far, or maybe he needs to look at Habanos from a different perspective. But I found that kind of interesting from a data perspective.
I gave Charlie credit. He ran with it for this year because if
Yeah,
he
yeah.
changed it, then it looks like he's manipulating. But next year, he could probably, if he wants to say next year it's got to come from multiple lists, then he's got a baseline to do it. But don't mess with it this year because you're messing with, you don't want to change the rules as you go along. So I
Well,
kind
I
of
mean,
respect it.
as a Habanos smoker, I mean, the way that I would handle it, and it's Charlie's list, so he can do whatever he
Yeah,
wants. But
yeah.
the way I would approach it is I would not treat it as, even though it is technically one company, I would not treat it as one brand. You know what I mean? I think that's where it went wrong. Is like, Cohiba is not the same as Ramon Leones. So like, the way I would handle them is, yeah, it technically is under one umbrella for a company, but they're all different brands. And to me, they should be segmented as individual brands. So Partagas, Ramon Leones, Cohiba, Trinidad, whatever, those are all each individual brands. I think that would be a little bit more fair. And if that was the case, then, Dunbarton would have won by a landslide. Like, I think he said the difference between 2 and 3 was, large. So,
Go ahead, Aaron.
no, go ahead. I'm just forming my thoughts. I'm old now, so it takes me longer.
I looked at the consensus this year, and Charlie does a lot of hard work on this, right? And I think it's great. But what does it mean that Umbagog Bronzeback is number 1 on the consensus this year? What does that mean? Because I looked at this list, right, and I was just like, there were a lot of perplexing things I saw that happened on this list this year. What does that mean?
So this is kind of the issue I brought up a couple years ago, Coop, is that I'm a data guy, right? Like, I come from data analytics.
Yeah.
I spent a decade like being in boardrooms and telling stories, and it all comes down to, don't show me the data, tell me the story. And so, like, I can take away a few things from this list. Like, I could say maybe the story here is that clearly, like Eric said, I think the big picture, Steve does a great job of getting his cigars in the hands of reviewers, whether they're buying them, whether they're getting samplers or whatever. He does an excellent job. So number 1, they want to smoke them. And number 2, they want to review them. And when they do review them, they tend to place pretty well on their lists consistently. I mean, he's got, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now where he's kind of been running away with it. So, that's kind of the one takeaway. The other thing I kind of look for is kind of like when I look at your list, Coop, I'm always looking for the cigar that's on that list that we didn't smoke so that I can give Aaron a hard time and be like, why didn't you pick that up? And Aaron's like, well, I didn't think it was going to be any good. Well, and I don't think there was anything on the list. I'm just looking at the list right now. I mean, obviously there's some Fuentes, and we're not big baller Fuente people, but other than the Fuentes, I think we smoked all of the stuff that was kind of 2024, except for the Padron. We smoked every single one of those, and I think we reviewed every single one of those. Which I think is from when I internalize that data, I look at that and I go, well, that's pretty good. We covered all the brands for sure, and we reviewed almost every single one of those cigars, which I don't think there's certainly years where I could say we didn't even smoke half of those. So, how do you look at it, Coop?
So, Charlie, this is how I answer it. Charlie says it's the relationship with media and manufacturers, right? And now I'll throw retailer in there a little too. But when I looked at Umbagog Bronzeback #1, this was what was very interesting. Like, people have said, oh, Steve's got the consensus figured out. He sends out those sampler packs in November. And he did do that. But Umbagog was ranked high before that this year.
Yeah, because it came out in April.
And there were a lot of those reviews were coming out like in the summer and stuff like. And I watched that one closely, right? And I still thought that Wagashi would overtake it right at the end of the year is what I was thinking. But nonetheless, so my point is I don't even think Steve needs to do that at this point, right? I don't think Steve needs to do it because he's got such. And what's very clear to me, and I don't think it applies to anyone on this panel, is that when you have a box of a queue of cigars to review, and your team has a queue of cigars to review, it's very clear that certain companies are getting precedence to get reviewed over other companies first. And Steve's making very good cigars. He's earned that right to have that precedence, right? But nonetheless, it probably is at the expense of a lot of other brands, right? Is what I'm kind of saying. Mm-hmm. And now I'm just looking at this consensus every year, and it's the same story every year. So I don't know. I think at this point, the consensus has kind of proved its point. I don't know what the point is to keep doing this, right? Is what I'm just saying. We know that Steve has got the hold on the market. So, I mean, does he win it he could win it every year now. It's very clear. 10 years, he's had top 3. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment for him, but I don't know if the consensus is really proving anything at this point. And there's a lot of other strange stuff I saw in this year's consensus we could get into. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what, like, if the point, like, Charlie keeps saying it's not the point to prove what was the best cigar. Well, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I don't have another way to do it. Is what I'm saying either. So I don't know. I think it's kind of I think it's starting to run its course. Is where I'm getting at with this. Unless someone else comes up with something else. But I can give you a couple of weird things I saw in the consensus this year.
Do it.
Atabey Black. This was that NFT cigar that was distributed to a handful of retailers. I think it was Atabey lounges and NFT holders, right? It was a very small amount, right? There was a group of people that got their hands on that cigar and it's, by the way, I reviewed it. I bought it. I reviewed it. It's a very good cigar. It was a 90 score cigar. I ruled NFT cigars weren't eligible on my list. And that was very limited distribution. How does a cigar with such limited distribution start landing on all these lists? And I started looking at this, okay? And I noticed this happening before the consensus. And what I discovered, and I think Charlie confirmed it, there was one guy who bought a box of those and sent it out to a bunch of YouTube guys. And it's the number 13 cigar on the consensus. It's just exploits. And Charlie will say there's flaws with the consensus, so I'm not blaming Charlie on it. But nonetheless, something like that can happen, and you can manipulate the consensus. And I was actually, I saw the comment just now about you can review every Vitola and then you can win the consensus. Is what I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm gonna start a site next year.
Yeah,
I'm gonna review one Oliva V, and then I'm gonna make my list, and there'll be 25 Vitolas of the Oliva V, and Oliva V will win the consensus.
And you win the consensus.
Lock it up.
Right.
I mean, if you want to bet in Vegas that Oliva V wins consensus next year, go ahead. It's easy money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say, I don't think we haven't known that relationship exists. That is, at the end of the day, the sort of big overreaching story is the cigar that wins is the cigar that gets reviewed. So if you have a cigar that, if you have a cigar and you get it in the hands of a bunch of people, I mean, I don't want to take away from the cigars. Obviously, if the cigar is a dog rocket, then, like, not to pick on the Mike Tyson cigar, but I think if you had given the Mike Tyson cigar out to 10 reviewers, I
It
don't
didn't.
think you would have seen.
Did it get any points on the consensus? I was wondering about that.
That's a good question. I don't know. I should
But
actually
if
take a
they
look at
sent
that.
it, it might have been a different story, is what I'm saying.
I'm not I want to be fair here. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that if you have a good cigar and for whatever reason, whether it's cost or availability or just the limited nature of the cigar, the more people that can review that cigar, that it's just a numbers game. You got 50 review sites. So if you can get it in the hands of, call it 5, 6 reviewers and it lands on their top list, then that cigar is going to do very well in the consensus. I mean, it's just a matter of numbers. There's not a wide breadth of reviewers, and I think the other thing that kind of plays into that is that everyone doesn't do the same thing, right? You got guys out there who their list just consists of like, I smoked these cigars this year, and this is what I liked, and I didn't, go out to smoke all the new brands or all the new releases. There's tons of guys out there that are like, I just go into my shop and I pick up cigars that I think are interesting and I smoke them and I don't care when they were released. And I liked it. I mean, the good example of that was the Tabernacle. I mean, it's kind of funny, but like, man, this cigar's like 7 years old now or 8 years old now. Like, what's it doing on the list? Like, yeah, we know it's good. It came out. Nick did a great job with that cigar. Like, let's move on to something else Nick's got. But that's the whole thing is like, it's not about new cigars. It's just kind of for everyone's doing a different thing. We do new cigars, but lots of guys out there, they don't. They do their own thing, and there's nothing wrong with that.
There's
But
nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I'm a manufacturer and I see Atabey Black on this list, right, and I'm like, I'll pick on someone random, like Rainier. He's making great cigars, Rainier.
mm,
And I'm wondering, does
no
he sit there
question.
saying, "What am I doing wrong?" Like an Atabey Black, which was distributed to, like, just a tiny amount of shops. One guy goes and gives it to everybody else, and suddenly now, like, my cigar's not on there at the expense. I mean, look at Drew Estate was a great example of that this year. The S84 was a pretty well ranked cigar on a lot of lists, right? And it got bumped to
26.
26 because of
26.
that Atabey. And it just seemed like something's not right here. This is not an accurate gauge of a pulse of the industry is what I'm kind of getting at.
Well, yes, but like to what you said earlier, I don't. That's not what Charlie necessarily is looking to do with the consensus. And I'll add to that to say,
I agree. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
yeah, and I'll add to that to say like, okay, so and I'll pick on Steve because he makes good cigars, but like the bronze back showing up number one in the consensus, right? What does that do? We all know the bronze back's good. Lots of guys have said it's good. Is it getting a number one in the consensus? Like, is that even going to move the dial one iota? Right? Like, is anyone going to go into a lounge and say, like, hey, I haven't tried the bronze back. I saw it on the consensus list. Maybe, but I suspect probably not. Right? Like, there's probably not. I mean, I don't think there's a group of consumers out there that are checking out the consensus and making a purchasing list based off of it.
No, they're not. But it's a big thing for Steve's brand, right?
Oh,
Steve can say, look at how I've dominated the consensus. And by the way, he deserves credit on this. This is not knocking him. He deserves. I mean, every year have something in the top three. Um, but I kind of look at like Papa Saka, which won it last year. Papa Saka was pretty quiet this year. I didn't really see like it built to your point, John.
yeah.
Papa Saka didn't get this like push, in my opinion, from winning the
Multi-year,
consensus last year. Is my
right?
point. And I don't think Umbagag will. I'm trying to think of a cigar that got a push from the consensus, and I really, over the years, I really can't think of one that did. Maybe in the early days, like Undercrown did it, right?
Well,
But
I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the cigars that show up on the list, it's kind of it's not a leading indicator, it's a trailing indicator, right? Like this isn't telling you kind of what's hot coming up. This is kind of showing you again, like this just happened to be what guys were smoking and reviewing. And like, what does that mean? Well, I think that's the problem is like, it just means that that was the cigar that people were smoking and reviewing. I don't think it necessarily means anything for the market. Like, I don't know that um, Davidoff Grand Cru Diademus Venus being on the list. I mean, there's no way that moves the dial for Davidoff. Like, nobody's looking at that cigar
almost,
number
yeah,
three and being like, "Oh, I should really buy that cigar." I
it
mean,
was a
it's
good
only
cigar. Yeah, it was a good cigar.
sure,
But
but at how much were those? 50, 57, something like that.
yeah, they went to 50.
62. They're not cheap. So I don't know if that motivates.
Well, I don't think it does, but I don't think that's the point of the list because
Totally.
Right, you're
it's
right.
not
Yeah,
even the point of Half Wheel. Like Half Wheel, that isn't their point. They don't they don't really like aiming at the cigar communities like we are. Like
Right.
they're more in I get that they review cigars and they do a great job with their reviews as well. But I think most people think of Half Wheel as, inside industry kind of stuff. And so this is interesting for the inside of the industry. Like,
Mm.
it's interesting to us. Here we are talking about it for 15 minutes, because now I do wish there was some sort of, I really do wish there was some sort of like cutoff with like some of the YouTube just fly by night lists that don't
Mm.
really publish any kind of content or put much effort into this, and then they throw out a list, and then that affects. I don't know. Do they have any kind of criteria for that? I don't really follow
They have
this.
to review one cigar during a year and
and it
not
doesn't have to
be
score.
not
They
be
don't even have to
attached to a
score it.
retailer.
They don't have to score it either. As long they can do it on the air, like if they're a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that just seems way too easy to,
It,
sway the list. Like
Yeah.
you could bang that out in a
it,
day,
yeah.
So I don't know, I kind of wish there was some sort of like a media score. I mean, we put, we have two full-time employees. This is our life. Like, I mean,
Well,
the Cigar Dojo is literally my life. That's the only thing that I do in my life, and it's the only thing that Jordan does. And then we got 4 or 5 other guys that do part-time stuff. It's like here we are, you know, dedicating everything to this, and then there's just people popping up on YouTube doing that. It seems kind of silly, right?
it's the other thing is it's at least with on Coop, and I think it's probably for everyone here. It's a 12-month process we go through
Yeah.
with this. So I mean, I was starting the 2025 list November 1st of last year, is what I'm just saying. So, and I know there's guys, and I hear them because they say, "Hey, I did this list like an hour before I went on video." I'm like, and I don't. But Charlie's problem is he's media, and if he starts excluding people, that are outside the rules, he's going to look like he's playing God. And I understand why he's kind of taken that approach. Is he's trying to make it, he's trying to paint it with a broader brush, and I kind of understand that. And he has some like strict, obviously, if you're a retailer, you're not getting on it, right? But how do you know if someone put a 12-month effort in or not? That's a tough one to do. I don't know how you fix it. It's been suggested to me that there needs to be like an alt consensus, but I don't know how you would do it.
I think there should just be some sort of multiplier, like media companies could be rated from 1 to 10 or something, and those, one is just worth, you're gonna get like a bump for the Coop list and the developing
Mm.
palates list, and you're gonna get less and less and less of a bump, just based on, how much content you publish in a year or something. I don't know the formula, but it just seems to me like there should be the people like us that are on the show that are really, really trying hard. It seems like that should be worth more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would agree with that, Eric. When I look at the YouTubers, the guys that do, and there's some YouTubers out there. They're like, they put out their list, and then in the comments, they're like, and here's a link to every single one of these reviews that I did throughout the year, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like for me, that's like personally as a consumer, because I consume a lot of cigar media content. I'm like, that's more relevant to me because I can say, okay, here's a guy who's done 50 reviews or 45 reviews. He's got a video for every review he did, and he's linking that back to the content. He put a lot of work into that list. And for me as a consumer, there's a lot more relevancy because I feel like there's a lot more effort put into that rather than just saying, and again, there's nothing wrong with saying like these are the 10 best cigars I smoked this year, but like, okay, where's the video? Well, I don't have a video. Okay.
Yeah.
You just kind of said, okay, I like this cigar. Nothing wrong with that. It's just for me personally, that doesn't move the dial for me at all.
Eric,
okay.
I'm just kind of curious, right? Was there a cigar that you thought on your list this year that was accessible? I'm not going to talk about you. Number one, I know was a little tough to get, right? But was there a cigar that you thought the media missed this year? That like, hey, they should have absolutely been on top of this cigar. Like for example, me it was Casa Magna Lancero. I think the media missed that one. Was there something like that you saw and you was like, where were the review? Like where was this cigar on another list? Was there another one?
Well, of course, here's my problem, Coop, is I didn't really look at too many other lists, but
Okay.
and that's not to be a jerk.
No, that's okay.
I don't. But like the H. Upmann 180th, like that's a perfect example. That's number 2 on our list.
That's a great cigar, by the way.
That is an amazing cigar. Like that,
I have a
everybody
review
should be
coming.
raving about that particular cigar. I don't know how I
I
know
didn't see it on any list, by the way, but yours. Just so you know, that's a
watching
good.
this show, you guys don't like the Chancellor,
No, but people did. But
we
Eric,
did smoke it. We did smoke it. We did review it.
And there were other lists I think that did have it on there. So I don't want to say but I think that Upman was a good example actually of one.
Yeah,
Where I
that's
was like, okay,
that's
why is that one
fantastic.
getting on there? Like, and it seems like it's a shame because nothing against Atabey Black, which was a great cigar. I'm like, but it was so hard to get that cigar. Like, I just think that it was at the expense of maybe like an H. Upman 180 or something like that.
I just full disclosure. I would say somewhere about I don't know August ish. We were just like, this is a terrible year. This is a terrible year. Like what is gonna be on? Like and we had a few that we knew that were gonna make the list because we liked them and stuff, but we're like, this doesn't. And I'll even it, as soon as September rolls around, we just literally start buying every possible thing that comes out in 2024 and just going through it all. And I'm very proud of the list, but it was not, it was a challenge. I'm just going to say that. It was challenging to come up with 20 cigars that we really felt like, oh wow, like this is now when I'm saying this, people are going to say, oh, like he doesn't even like the cigars. No, I'm saying it took a while because we had to buy so many. We had to go through, we had to find some gems out there. We had to find some needles in the haystack. It was not an easy year. Like some years it's just easy. That's number one. It was a kind of a crazy year.
That leads right into the next question, which was, do you think on average the cigars in 2024 were better, equal, or worse than what was in 2023? And then you seem to answer that 2023 was better. This was a rough year.
I think it was a rough year. I mean, ultimately, there was some great cigars that came out. With the H. Upmann 180th is obviously. I know we got a lot of crap about the Nestor. I don't care. That's a freaking amazing cigar, man.
Well, Raphael can say he had the number one soul like regular. He can make that number like he did with the
top. Our top 3 are expensive and hard to get. Like our top 3.
What was your 3 again?
The
What was your
Davidoff.
third?
Yeah,
That was on a lot of
Diademas.
that one. I predicted you were gonna have that one on your list, though.
Yeah, you did. You did predict that.
I didn't do bad. I didn't have the
Yeah.
positions right, but I had a lot of your guesses right.
Yeah.
I gotta
So, a couple years ago, we changed our strategy where 'cause we had a problem. We had a problem with our list, which was we had the top 10 and then we had the top 5 limiteds. And so then at the end of the year, it's like, okay, well, what is the top cigar? Like, this was your top limited. This was the best on your regular release list. And so there was this weird ambiguity. And so finally, we were just like, you know what? We're just going to combine that and we'll add 5. So we'll make 20. And that way, we're just gonna present to you what we believe is the best cigar that was produced in 2024, regardless of how hard. The only caveats are it can't be our cigar. and it can't be Cuban. Those are the only two real caveats to it. But so it was a challenging list. I think, Aaron, to answer your question, I don't think it was a great year for cigars overall. I think it was a little down. That's my opinion. What do you guys think?
My list is a little skewed because I have a lot of 20. I use a longer cycle.
Yeah.
But what I would agree with you on, I think the 23 cycle stuff was stronger than the 24 cycle stuff I'm seeing now, for sure. But I'm now into a lot of the 24 stuff, and there's definitely been a dip. I don't want to say it's been horrible, but I haven't had like of the 24s, I haven't had something that's really standing out to say it's already the leader out of the gate. Late last year, I was starting to smoke those Perdomos as I was even building the 23 list, and I knew that was going to be a contender, at least on my list. So, but I haven't seen it. Maybe Event Horizon by Intergalactic is one that's standing out to me right now, but it seems like it seems like it's definitely been slower this year, for 24 rather.
I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth, and then Aaron can call me out because he's got all the data, and so he can throw me right under the bus. But so, like, the way I look at it is, and I agree. I feel like anecdotally, like if you were to take an average from how I scored this year, I feel like the average is slightly down. But I feel like that's weird to look at because what it is that unlike 2023, there was sort of a group of cigars that were at the upper echelon, and they stood out, like way stood out. And then what happened was there's just a whole pile of cigars that I think for me scored lower than how I was scoring last year. So like, you know what I mean? Like the averages, there was more lower scored cigars on average than I've scored previously. And the cigars that stood out that are going to kind of make the list also scored higher than I think on average I scored last year. So in a way, it's kind of a good story that, these cigars are significant standouts. However, I had to go through kind of all these cigars to find them. And those cigars didn't do so well in comparison. Like probably almost a 3 point gap, 2.7 gap between the sort of, call it the average and what I considered was a standout. Aaron?
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely a down year. I've got all my number tabulated for 2024. There's definitely a drop in the average of review scores for me. And so far for you, John, it's the same, but there's a couple more that we still have to get in there. So,
Well, I'm
but
glad I don't look dumb.
you may see a pretty significant drop for you in 2024. So,
Yeah, well, like I said, I think it's and like I know for a fact that I scored some of the lowest scores. Like I was getting into Seth territory with some of my scoring, where I was like, "Man, am I being mean here?" And I was like, "No, like that's a fair assessment of my experience." And so, I kind of dipped into, I call it Seth territory, because Seth can be pretty unforgiving on some of his scores, and so I felt like a lot more scores for me got into that territory than in the past.
all right. Any other 2024 topics that you guys want to cover? We can look ahead a little bit to 2025. Go forward. All right. Cooper, you're here, right? Oh, he went away. All right. Well, I'll hold off on that topic then for a second. Let's talk a little bit about the PCA. Moving to New Orleans.
Back, baby.
Now we get kind of our, 2015 was our last trip
Yeah.
out there. It was
can't believe
not
it's been
all
10
that
years.
pleasant, I wouldn't think, in regards to the weather and stuff like that. So what do you guys think is going to happen this year?
Well, first of all, is the weather was not pleasant in 2015, but I gotta say, some of the greatest dojo stories of all time came out of that event.
Yeah.
So
That Dojo party was good that year. I remember
it-
that one.
that was fun.
Hemingway's,
That
yeah.
was a
Anyways,
spectacular
yeah.
party.
The famous pants story happened. Jack's pants story happened in that event. It was hot, man. It was really hot. And so this year the weather should be nice. But I gotta say, I can't stand this. Like just like trying to find the place to stay, the house that will work. It's very difficult to find. Like Vegas is easy, man.
yeah.
3,500 bucks and you can get a big old house with a giant pool and your whole team can stay and you have extra beds in case another guy comes along. Like this year, I have to be we're going with the skeleton crew. It's going to be four. It's going to be four guys tops because just the housing, like even most houses that say, around that area that say, yeah, it sleeps four. Well, that's like two queen beds,
Yeah.
So that's I'm not
Maybe
sleeping with
maybe an
Randy.
air mattress you could blow up.
I'm not sleeping with Randy. You know what I'm saying? And
Oh
so
boy.
it's a lot trickier to get
Yeah.
the set up, and it's more expensive. And so for that, I'm not looking forward to it. But at the same time, there's also some excitement, Aaron, because it's different. It's
Yeah.
something different.
It's different. I agree with you on that. I'm not hitting the same problems, by the way. I looked at the costs this year for the house, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, well, we have to take our crew out there, obviously, and it's important for everyone to be there. But man, the
Yeah.
numbers. Uh, I I think. Look, I have a lot of confidence in Josh and his team this year. Well, compared to 15.
Yeah.
There's good leadership, and they are doing all the right. Look, they have challenges in New Orleans. There's no question about it. I feel they're dealing with the challenges. I don't think it's going to be ideal. It's not going to be Vegas, and I just got to accept that. But I think they're doing a lot of the right things there. I like that they're adding this whole comedy night thing. I think it's a cool idea that you use industry people, right? I love this idea of using
But
industry
Coop, why aren't you on the bill?
because I got to cover it because I won't have time to even be there, right?
Come
So,
on.
so
15-minute Coop stand-up session. I
I'm
would
not.
pay any amount. Any amount.
So I'm not the mystery guest. And by the way, that is the worst idea of trying to advertise an event with a mystery guest. You need to get people to the trade show. You need to if you have a mystery guest, then announce who the mystery guest is. If you don't have it, then just keep quiet. That is the dumbest idea. And if anyone from PCA is listening, they can call me on that. It is the dumbest idea I ever heard of having a mystery.
If it's Rogan,
You
you
gotta get
want to
people
get
to the
that
trade
out
show.
now. Tell
You need
everyone
to-
now it's Rogan, and ride that into the trade
If
show.
you have someone, but if you don't have it, then just keep quiet until you know.
Coop, I already know who it is.
Oh, you do.
It's Paul Poundstone.
Who?
I knew Eric would get a
Paula Poundstone. Wow, there's a name from
That,
the past.
then don't even bother. Then don't even bother saying it. All of. I mean,
Go ahead.
I mean,
do it.
At least it's
I mean,
not Judy Tenuto. I mean, it could have
There
been
you
worse.
go.
I love that PCA in the last what they've done with some of this stuff, like the opening day thing. The last year, PCA was great. They did a great job. They had the hand roll thing. They've done a good. They used more industry people instead of paying $50,000 for some keynote that people aren't even showing up for. I love what they've been doing with this, right? So I think I could criticize the mystery guest, but the pluses as far outweigh the minuses here. They're doing a good job here. But they at the same time they have a lot of pressure because if New Orleans fails, they have to go back the following year.
Yeah.
They can't miss is the thing. It's very. I have confidence they won't, but I'm just saying they can't afford to miss.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
seems like
I
they have
think-
some good
Go ahead.
events, kind of things like you said with the comedy thing, but like kind of areas where people can get together, like maybe that smoking lounge right outside the convention center at the end, kind of at the end of the event and stuff like that. So, but I think I'll be curious to see what the attendance is at these events because with people being so spread out, I think people
Right.
may just kind of scatter after
Yeah.
and you don't see them till the next day, kind of a thing.
Well, that's what we saw in 2015, right? I mean, obviously, weather is a factor in the sense that 2015, like Eric said, I mean, the weather was brutal. Robbie can tell you the story of us wandering the streets at 3 a.m. looking for beer. But that's a huge improvement. April time is. I've said it from the moment they moved it to the earlier part of the year. If you can move it into the April-May time frame, that's perfect. And so the fact that it's in April is fantastic.
Yeah.
It is unfortunately, like you said, Eric, it's not Vegas. So, everyone just needs to adjust to the fact it's not going to be Vegas. And as a result, I think one of the things we might be looking at is unfortunately people are going to have to make decisions about, are we going to this party or are we going to this party? Because maybe we can't make both. It's not like Vegas where you can, show up, make an appearance, drink a drink, and then leave and go to the next one. That might not be on the table depending on where they're located this year.
Yeah. But the bottom line is People want a place to smoke. That's the
Mhm.
bottom line. Now, however they work that out, I mean, I think when you start getting into things where you like, I remember they were doing a few of those nightclub things in PCA, and I don't think that worked out great because if you can't smoke, you can't. People want to smoke. That's the
Yeah.
number one thing, and they want to smoke with people they don't get to see that often, right? So it is very important. I don't think they have to over engineer this. Other than it sounds like they've got some things planned. And by the way, PCA put out a nice guide of where to smoke. They published a guide. There's a lot of good stuff out on the PCA website. And I know they took a trip out there. Jay was on that trip, and they did a lot of reconnaissance of these places. So. They've done a good job with this. So I'm confident that they will do okay, but they can't miss, is what I'm just saying.
Right.
Yeah, I guess to answer the question that's kind of hanging out there is I feel like retailer attendance is probably going to be pretty flat.
Flat,
Like I'm going to say conservative flat, which is not a down thing. When you change cities, there's always a lot of question marks about attendance because it's in a significantly different. I mean, it's a lot further for me to fly to. Not that I'm important, but
No.
it's a no, not at
Can
all.
you get a direct flight? Can you get a direct flight there?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't
From
think so.
Calgary to New
Yeah,
Orleans, are
yeah.
you kidding me?
Where-
I mean, if I even brought that up with the airlines, they'd be like,
Yeah.
"What are you talking about?"
Yeah, man. I have to go through Denver.
Yeah. By the way,
Oh.
the pink Cadillac's coming back this year. Big
Yeah.
announcement. The pink Cadillac's back. We're driving this year. I haven't
Wow.
driven in 7 years, so it's coming back this year. We're doing the drive, Ben and I. So
Mm.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
a big
I
announcement.
had to connect either through
Hopefully Ben
Atlanta,
makes it.
Salt Lake, or
Yeah.
Dallas, and I would have gone Dallas, but curiously, the flight's considerably more expensive for Dallas than connecting any of the other places. So I'll be going east before I go south. So
Yeah, most of our travel is going to be cheaper, I think, with one exception.
interesting.
So yeah,
well,
I think
obviously for me, because I'm coming further than Eric. Vegas was convenient for trip because I mean I can get a flight to Vegas on even last minute for like $300, $350. New Orleans, not so much. I'm going west to east, and that's always painful, but it is what it is, and I'm going to show up. But I do think just because of the timing change from March to April and the venue change from Vegas to New Orleans, and I think there's some conflict, a little bit of conflict with the timing. There's other things going on with holidays. I think attendance is going to be, it might be up 1% or 1.5%, but I think it's going to be a rounding error. It's going to be pretty flat.
Yeah, Passover is going to be tough this year for a lot of
Yeah.
people.
And
It's going to be a tough one.
Spring break
Yeah.
for a lot of people too.
Spring break as well. Yeah, it's a tough week. I think if those factors weren't in there, maybe you get a little. But that's why I think it's going to be flat. And I think if they keep it flat, I'm okay. That's okay. I think it'll be okay.
Well, I think the thing is success breeds success, right? So if everyone comes out of the trade show and they're like, "Oh man, New Orleans is such a breath of fresh air, great food, and great beer, and we had a great smoking event, and there's some epic things that happened, and there's some great stories." That could certainly lend itself to that sort of first year shyness. Second year, people are like, "Well, it's the last year in New Orleans, so I'm going to go." Because who knows when it's going to be back in New Orleans? It could be another 10 years, if at all. So that second year, I could definitely see a bump if this year is successful and everyone has good stories to tell.
All right, mergers and acquisitions next year. Do we see any occurring? Any significant ones, maybe?
I'm sure there's going to be some. I don't have any
Right.
inside info on anything. I
Yeah.
wish I did, but there's always one or two, right? That are. Was there anything this year?
The two big
Caldwell,
ones
right?
were.
Well,
Pardon me?
wasn't that last year? Was that
No,
this year?
well,
Caldwell was
20 March
2024.
1st, 24.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And,
yeah, there you
and
go.
The other,
Just seems like
the other
years
big
ago.
one, which it's kind of cigar adjacent, was the Mac Baron
Huge.
acquisition by STG, and I think
Mm.
that was really a pipe tobacco based acquisition. But the other aspect was Sutliff is doing distribution for quite a number of smaller brands, and so I mean, they've figured it out. They've got alternate distribution, but that did impact the industry quite a bit. Where I think it was about 5 or 6 different brands had to find alternative distribution. So I don't think it's going to affect the trade show. They're going to still be at the trade show, just under different distribution arms.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what the layout's like because they were all in that
Yeah.
kind of Sutliff scenario. But now City of
It
Palms
was
has a fair
convenient.
number of them, so I wonder if they do a similar thing where they create a little pavilion
Little
of their own.
kiosk, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was convenient. I like the Sutliff layout. It was open. All those brands are kind of in one. It was kind of like a mini boutique organization that just kind of within their own distribution. I thought it worked well. It was that way for a long time.
It was really good, I thought, because you had a lot of customers of Sutliff who were who sold pipe tobaccos, and they were exposed. They were very interested in these other brands, these smaller brands, and I had so many retailers come up to me, asking me about brands they saw there. My thoughts, if I had interactions with them. More so than the Boutique Cigar Association. I got to be completely honest on that. The Sutliff ones had definitely some legs, but
Well, I mean,
I
a
think
lot
they
of
all.
those.
I wonder
To
if
be
City of
fair,
Palms is
Coop, a
going
lot
to
of
do
those
that.
brands have been out for 8-10 years, right? So they kind of, it's a little unfair because the whole point of the boutique cigar is not to stump for the BCA, but
No, they're right. You're fair.
those are all like small brands that no one's ever heard of, and that's kind of the whole point. Versus Sutliff, I mean, they got a stable of like Patina, which was going into its 10th year, so it's a little uneven.
No, I agree with you on that. But a lot of those folks did go to a new distributor called City of Palms.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I don't know if City of Palms is exhibiting or not. It's a good question. If Jay, if you know the answer to that when you're in there, let me know. But City of Palms has taken over a lot of that distribution from Sutliff, so they do have another avenue with that. That maybe that can happen, where they could still kind of do a lot of that joint stuff. But from what I saw, most of those companies had separate booths.
Yeah.
But I guess to answer the underlying question that Aaron was asking is, I've still been waiting for a mid-sized cigar company acquisition. And I don't know, like, I can't put myself out there because I have no insider information, but I kind of figured that would happen through 2024, and I was surprised that it didn't happen. And I'm still waiting for that to happen. So maybe 2025 is the year, but who that is and when that happens, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't even hazard a guess, but I feel like there is a mid-sized acquisition out there waiting to happen.
Interesting one. Caldwell wasn't mid-size. It was a decent-size acquisition. It was an acquisition of his company, not just his brand. So, but I wouldn't put him as mid. I agree, he's not mid-size. I would put Tatawai, and I know Tatawai's not selling. I'm just saying something along the size of that company you'd be looking at. And I was surprised we didn't see that either.
Pete was joking that he wants to be acquired by my father.
Yeah.
He's like, just buy me. Just buy me. You got money. Just buy me. You got a number one. Come on.
We talked about. I thought the Ladishi acquisition of Caldwell was a great one, by the way. And I know some of the folks at Ladishi. They're great guys, and it's a good fit for Robert. By the way, so I think it was really good for him. I think he's gonna be able to really focus on what he does best too. So hopefully that is a long-term thing we see with him there, because I think it's a great. We know Robert can blend, and we know he's got a good palate and a lot of stuff. So, I always thought the other stuff Robert was like he didn't really, marketing and stuff really wasn't something he wanted to do it, But I think now he can really focus on what he does best. So, yeah. But I don't know. There's so many. I haven't heard like that big rumor that's coming, right?
Mhm.
Like the Alec Bradley one. I think I've said it. We knew that was happening.
Yeah.
I was told it was happening after I gave them number one cigar. Someone called me up and said, "You're going to have a cigar in a year. That's going to be
Right.
You're going to be giving it to another company." So there's nothing I've heard of that I could say there's legs with this.
What about the El Teton situation? Does that re-emerge or is that dead?
I don't think it's dead. I don't know if it will reemerge this year.
Okay.
I have some thoughts on that. I think. I don't know what we for everything we heard, it was going to be an acquisition.
Yeah.
I know there was a story someone printed on that, right? Which it turned out it turned out not to be true, but I was hearing the same stuff that was in that story, just so folks know. We were hearing it from some very reliable sources. So something changed with that. But I kind of wonder at some point Sandy retiring. What happens?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
All
will
right.
say.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, one last thing. I will say if there is a mid-side acquisition, I really don't think it's happening before the trade show. I think that's something that's going to be kind
Yeah.
of either late summer, early fall. It'll be in the second half of 2025 if it does happen.
I got breaking news here, by the way.
Oh,
All right.
You guys remember Jamie Estrada from Royal Agio?
Yes.
yeah.
I just got a press release. He has joined 1502 Cigars
Interesting.
Ooh,
as the chief growth officer.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah.
I like Enrique. I've always
I
liked
li-
his cigars. Good for him.
Yeah, and I like Jamie a lot with Royal Agio. So
Yeah, for sure.
yep,
Wait, what's his position?
he's gonna be the chief growth officer.
They
Whatever.
have a
I'm not.
chief growth officer at that company. I'm
Well,
shocked.
anything is growth, right?
He was one of. I love dealing with Jamie. Jamie was one of the best guys I dealt
I
with.
don't even know the guy, but
Yeah, he was with Royal
I haven't-
Agio. He was running the Royal Agio piece.
1502 hasn't made a peep for 10 years or something.
No one stays away. Yeah, but he that was the announcement I just got. I just literally got this
There you
last
go.
minute ago.
All right. So last year we talked about Ecuador and kind of the issues that were going on there in regards to political issues and some weather issues with tobacco growth. But I don't think we really saw any effects on cigars this year. And as we know, as tobacco's grown and then it's cured and all that stuff, it takes some time to make its way kind of into the pipeline. So do we think we see any bigger issues with that this year in regards to the amount of it used in cigars, particularly wrapper, things like that?
I'll just lead off because I did a little bit of reading and I have no special insight into the tobacco side of business, but I know that they had 3 consecutive months of rolling blackouts in Ecuador through December. And I think the industry it affected both companies and individual people. And they lifted the restrictions of blackouts on individuals, but kept the blackouts for industry. So I don't know, it's hard to say, like, is that really going to affect a farmer who's out driving a tractor? Like, I don't know that, because it's not like a ton of that is really power based. It's got to have some impact, but not as much as if you're running a factory. But it is concerning because coupled with that, they had pretty severe drought through 2024. So you've got energy shortage, you've got drought. Obviously, if the drought continues, that's going to be impactful for the cigar industry. It's tough to measure that because when you're talking about filler or wrapper tobacco, you're measuring that 2 or 3 years out. So the effects of something like that might not even be felt until 2027, 2028. So it kind of seems like for the short term, I can't see it really impacting things, but you do kind of wonder going down the road with companies moving factories and moving production to Honduras, if that's not hedging the bets to say, well, things on the horizon are not looking great for Ecuador.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was actually thinking about that because we really didn't see a lot of the effects last year. But like you said, Aaron, it takes some time for this to happen. There's a few big producers out of Ecuador that, people source tobacco from, ASP and Oliva. And I think ultimately it's going to come down to those supplies of those two companies. And we may start seeing some of that. I don't know quite what their status is with that, unfortunately, but we may start seeing some of that. It's probably why we're seeing more San Andreas wrappers. We're seeing more Nicaraguan wrappers for sure. So we're seeing some of that for sure. But I think we could see a little more of that in 25.
Okay.
But the amount of Sumatra that came out last year, you would think there was no shortage, by the way.
Right.
There was
Yeah.
a lot of Sumatra.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're past that Sumatra phase too.
I wouldn't bet on that, Coop.
No.
I wouldn't bet on that.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but I think it's going to come down to the ASPs and the Olivas. That's where I would see it, and it could put a squeeze on some smaller companies in the smaller factories. I think the bigger factories will be fine, but the smaller ones will be the ones I'm more concerned with right now. So
Yeah,
you may
I guess
watch. Yeah.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is you're either going to see that in limited tobacco availability or pricing going up because they have to pay
Yeah.
more to source tobacco because they're competing with what limited available tobacco is through their channels. So yeah, that would be
You,
unfortunate.
Pete said this on the show Aaron and I did last. This is not a secret. Honduras is going to be a big focus of my father. They have a
Yeah.
factory. They're growing tobacco there. They're going to start rolling out blends with there. So maybe, and they use a lot of Ecuadorian tobacco on their blends. So you may start to see some of that. Even with Pete's stuff, you've been seeing him go to the Garcia, Nicaraguan, Corojo wrappers and things
Yep.
like that. So you're seeing some things already happen with that, is what I'm saying, too.
All right. Quantity of new releases in 2025. Do we think we see an uptick, stays kind of flat, or we see a reduction in releases this year?
Up,
Eric?
Mm.
up. I'm going to say up.
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would
I
have
would.
been my gut. That would have been my gut
Yeah.
reaction. Um, it seems like more and more and more new. There's pretty some kind of interesting like that El Mago company like going to they have their own sort of factory that they not their own but they went to a factory that isn't like one of the main ones, you know. So there's I like that kind of stuff, like seeing new companies
Yeah.
and you guys brought up Domain earlier, like
Yeah.
um so all those people are gonna have new releases to get your attention. So it seems like, you know, there's it's probably gonna be a pretty hefty year. Now, will it be a good year quality wise or not? That's a different question, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Will there be a lot of limiteds versus regular production?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'll still see a lot of limiteds. I think companies just figured it out. We need to come to something out at the trade show. There's nothing easier to do than a limited.
Yeah.
So I don't think, but I think you'll see a couple. I think there's going to be a reduction in SKUs too. So
Mm.
what you see, the net amount of stuff in the market may still stay flat because I think there's going to be a lot of companies discontinuing lines this year because there's like so many retailers overbought last year. They just can't continue to support all these different lines. So if they want to come out with something new, something's going to have to give. And we've seen like STG and Drew Estate already doing some of that,
Yeah.
which is not a bad thing. It's like a healthy thing. Get rid of stuff that's not selling, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah, I also think it's going to be up. I don't think it's going to be up dramatically, but I do recall most most exhibitors that we visited and sort of had long conversations with, almost across the board said, you know, we've got these two or three things come out this year, and we absolutely have something already in the hopper for next year, which is I think the first time I can recall in memory where companies were consistently saying we've been working on this and we're absolutely targeting this as a New Orleans release. And that was like a consistent conversation where, in fact, so much so that Coop and I were talking about back at the house. I was like, I can't believe how many companies are already preparing for next year, because that's usually not the
yeah,
case. It's usually, well, we're thinking about it and we'll start working on it later this year. But you know, this time it was like, no, we deliberately, either we have it ready and we've deliberately held it back for next year, or it's kind of being finalized and it'll 100% be exhibited next year. And I was very surprised by that. So I think, you know, that's going to kind of like, I agree with Coop. I think there's going to be some consolidation, but in terms of new releases, I think it's going to be up, not huge, but certainly noticeable.
I already noticed some companies going to retailers saying we have this coming out at the trade show and they're going to
Oh,
ship in
wow.
April. And if you want to get in on it, put your orders in now. I already know that's happening because
There you
media is
go.
always the last to know. So
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to know this stuff, Coop.
we don't need to know about it.
No,
Yeah,
no.
but yeah, yeah.
And then how about
That's,
pricing? We think we're going to see a continued increase in this, or are people going to try
Yeah.
to keep pricing even?
I think we're gonna feel the effects of the last few years, you know, continuing to hit for a while. It's gonna take a while for that stuff to mellow out, you know, like
Yeah.
prices of eggs and gas and milk and all that tires and rubber and everything adds up over time and
Yeah.
it doesn't go away right away. It takes time to go away. And so yeah, I think prices will continue to rise for at least a couple years.
I agree. Agree 100% on that.
yeah, I agree. I think I think, and I hate to say it, but I think we might start to see, because we've seen that average price point kind of in last year in mid 15s or like low mid 15s, and this year I think it was kind of pushing towards call it 1575. I kind of feel like we might start seeing a lot of releases hitting at the 15.99, $16 mark for 2025, and I think I don't think the sort of stampede of ultra premiums 35 $40 up is going to stop. I think if anything, you're going to see more of that this year.
Yep, I concur.
All right. Wrapping up, FDA related items moving forward, Coop. What do we
Okay.
got to look out for on the horizon here?
Well, obviously the big thing is the appeal. I mean, I think it sounds like they're expecting something the first half of the year where they're going to rule on the appeal. I don't really have like. I think there's confidence the industry's going to win the appeal. I'm not convinced of that. So, it's hard to judge an appellate court judge, right, with that. So, I don't know. I don't have a good answer with that. Obviously, the thing on nicotine came out and cigars were exempt. But a lot of that, if that appeal happens, what does that mean for they haven't ruled out that cigars are going to be exempt from nicotine. They just said we're tabling it till the court case resolves. So, and if you look at those nicotine limit levels, their cigars are higher than that. Is what I'm just going to tell you. It's like a zero point 0.7 milligrams per gram or something like that of nicotine. That could be a big challenge for the industry with that as well. But at least they got at least for now, there's a little relief. It's not something they have to worry about. But what I like about with the trade organizations, in particular PCA and CRA, is they're trying to get ahead of this stuff now.
Mhm.
They're not trying to play catch up. So I think now's the time to start building your case with that and see what happens with that. But I think this court case thing is going to be a big story this year. Which way it goes, I can't say, but it will be a big story. It wouldn't surprise me if this court thing gets ruled right around PCA too.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I have to assume if they uphold Meta's decision to vacate, I have to assume that that's going to put a bit of a damper on the FDA's plans to potentially follow up with nicotine ruling, because you're essentially having to start all over, which again, to our FDA conversation earlier, it's not a win, it's just a stalling action, but it would be a very big stalling action, and I think I would count that as a win for the industry for sure. It would be cool, like last year, if we could get that information. If the ruling could come down, and I think it's supposed to, like you said, first quarter. If it can come out positively before the trade show, that's great. I mean, that's going to bring a lot of positive energy into the trade show, I think. So I'd love to see that.
I've heard the FDA is coming to the trade show this year.
Well, that makes sense. They were there last year too, right?
Yeah, but I think some of the more senior people are coming this year, is from what I've heard. So that will be something to watch as well. But there's a new administration. We don't really know where cigars and tobacco lie in the priorities. We know where regulatory stuff may lie. So even if we lose, depends how fast they accelerate this. It may be a slower process. But if we win, don't forget we're not exempt from regulation. It just means they have to go back to square one. So
it is kind of interesting though to see that with the ATF is kind of having to play defense now. So it's kind of interesting to see the shoes on the other foot. The regulatory agencies are sort of having to be playing defense for the first time, and they've been playing offense for forever.
Right, and don't forget the Chevron ruling was a big win.
Yeah, the Chevron ruling is vacated. Yeah,
which basically curtails what the FDA can do on top of that with their rulemaking process. But we don't exactly understand what that's going to mean, other than they may have to now go through some judiciary stuff to do what they want.
Which again, because I think again, it's not about. There's no definitive win, right? It's all stalling action. So if they have to go through multiple levels of appellate courts in order to get new legislation put in, that's a win for the industry, because it's going to take a heck of a lot longer. I mean, prior to the Chevron ruling, it took decades for legislation to get through court systems. So, again, that's a win for the industry.
Generational tobacco bans. Do we see any pass in 2025?
Yes,
I think Hawaii
Hawaii
is,
would be the
yeah.
one.
I don't think it's going to be the first half of the year because I think the way their courts work. But I think that's pretty much a lock, honestly. And I think it's what 2000. Was it 2003 or 2005? I think it's 2005 is
Yeah,
their designated
For
date.
start date.
Yeah,
yeah. And then the big thing where everyone's watching is the UK.
right.
What happens in the UK could really change everything in the US. If that goes into effect in the UK, I'm very worried. And I don't have a good feel for what's happening with the. I've heard back and forth, yes and no, as far as cigars go. But I think even if there's any type of generational ban on any type of tobacco, it's bad. I mean, we got a little bit of a. New Zealand repealed it last year,
Yeah.
but that was a negotiation for the new government. Is kind of what happened with that.
Hmm.
So, I don't know if that will happen in the UK. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, Canada typically follows sort of Australia and the UK in terms of legislation like that, but it's a bit of an interesting situation where the government in Canada is going to change quite quickly here, and it's going to go from a liberal government to a staunchly conservative government, which means the likelihood of generational tobacco ban being passed in the next 4 to 6 years is essentially zero. So, in a kind of a roundabout way, it might be a good news story for the U.S. because I think if Canada were to also follow suit and do a generational tobacco ban, you could see that being a little troubling to sort of see two large trading partners do that. But given that if the UK does pass, and it certainly does seem like it's going to, I think it's almost a 0% chance that Canada follows suit anytime soon.
The cigar industry took a little bit of a hit last year in the elections. People don't realize it, but there were two key people. Like we're always viewed, I guess, as cigar industry is always viewed with the conservative government here, the Republicans. But there were two key Democrats that are no longer in office that were big supporters. It was Bob Casey and Bob Menendez. They are no longer in their jobs, is what I'm just saying. So those are two key allies that were lost to the industry last year.
Hmm.
So again, something to watch. From what I understand, those guys did a lot behind the scenes. So
Right.
something to watch is what I'm just
Where
saying
where
too.
the actual where the actual rulemaking is done, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
All right. Anything else that we look ahead for 2025? Are we at the wrapping point?
I think SKU reductions are the big thing to watch.
Okay.
I think there'll be a lot of reductions for that for sure. So I'd keep an eye on that. Um, and obviously we talked about New Orleans, right? So that's going to be what comes out of that. I think we'll know. Um, and then acquisitions are a toss up at this point.
Yep. All right. I think we're at the wrapping point. So, Eric from Cigar Dojo, I want to thank you very much for joining us and all your good input.
Yeah,
Will, thank you
thank
as
you.
well.
Yep.
And John, thank you as always.
Thank you.
So put a wrap out here on 2024. Looking ahead to 2025 and all the great new expensive cigars that we're going to get to smoke in 2025. So thank you all for joining in, and
Hey,
we
Aaron,
will. Oh yeah,
before we wrap, do you just want to give a chance for everyone to talk about upcoming shows, including our own?
uh, absolutely, we could do that. Eric, you have a show this Friday,
Uh,
or
I,
you have Odyssey on Wednesday even?
we have Odyssey on Wednesday. We're starting our going through the sampler. So we'll start with the Espinosa Sumatra to find some good drink pairings for that.
Yeah,
And then I'm working on a show for Friday, but I don't have it laid out yet. And then next week, I'm going to go hang out with Coop at TPE.
there you
Hope
Nice.
I hope I'll give you a detail on that.
What?
go.
Oh, Coop, I'm
Oh
going to kill
boy.
you if you don't go. The only reason I'm going is because you said you're going.
I know, I know.
All right, Coop, what do you got going on?
We have a lot going on this week. Tomorrow, on special edition, we have Mike Copperman and Cody Carden from CRA on. Ben
Nice.
will be co-hosting because Bear is traveling. He'll be on a plane that night, and we didn't want to reschedule those guys. Thursday night, we have Matt Booth, Aaron, and I. That will always be an entertaining show. So we also have coming up next Monday a jukebox show we're going to be covering, we're going to be picking a year in music in the past, and we're going to be talking about the music for that year. We're still finalizing the year. And then we also have a Smoking Syndicate Roundtable next Monday, and that will be, I believe, we're doing lure cigars on
All
Monday.
right.
So a lot coming up the next week, and then the week after we have Dan Thompson as well
Yeah.
from McAuliffe.
Perfect.
So a lot going on.
Monday, the 27th, we are tentatively scheduling our Cigar of the Year reveal. We're
Mm.
just making sure to get all the final cigars uh, submitted. So we'll be able to do that. So keep an eye out for that. We'll get a confirmation later this week if that's going to occur or may follow to the following Monday. So but we're targeting the 27th. So, and hopefully at that point, we'll be kind of done with the shows for 2024. We'll have a couple like value cigar list and kind of behind the scene numbers list after that. But that'll be the goal at that point. So, all right. Thank you guys all for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one.